The story opens in Manhattan, New York, where players are suddenly notified that a demotion match has begun. The objective couldn't be simpler on paper: defend and survive. But before anyone can even process the mission, space itself tears open. Two enormous eyes appear inside the rift, followed by a gigantic claw forcing its way into reality. It isn't just another monster, it's the Apocalypse Behemoth, and the moment its massive paw touches Earth, the surrounding area begins collapsing. Panic spreads through the battlefield as people realize the nightmare has already arrived. The system immediately issues a new objective: eliminate the behemoth before it destroys the entire world. The monster answers with a deafening roar, while one of the veteran fighters desperately orders everyone to hold formation. If they fail here, humanity is finished. The behemoth raises its colossal arm, preparing to wipe everyone out in a single strike, as the desperate fighters rush towards certain death. As the battle begins, the story reveals how humanity ended up in this hopeless situation. BattleNet first appeared in 2010 as nothing more than a competition between nations. But everything changed in 2022 when the Space League was introduced, turning those competitions into an all-out survival war against countless intelligent races across the universe. Humanity fought to protect Earth, but lost over and over again. By 2023, only 10 countries remained on the planet, with mankind standing on the very edge of extinction. Right then, the behemoth unleashes a devastating blast of energy toward the defenders. There is no strategy left, no escape route, and no way to block an attack of that scale. Just as everyone prepares to take the hit head-on, a lone figure suddenly appears high above the battlefield, forcing even the behemoth itself to look up. That man is Seong Ji-han, and his entrance is just as monstrous as the enemies. He dives straight through the middle of the behemoth's energy attack without slowing down, closes the distance in an instant, and drives a devastating punch directly into the monster's face. The impact caves in the ground beneath them as the behemoth is slammed into the earth. The stunned fighters can hardly believe what they're witnessing. One man just defeated the Apocalypse Behemoth by himself. Moments later, the system announces that the United States mission has been successfully cleared. The crowd immediately erupts in praise, recognizing the power of the martial saint. They introduce Seong Ji-han as the world's 7th-ranked player and a member of the America First Guild. Watching from above, Baron Williams, the world's #1 ranked player and leader of America First, proudly declares it another glorious victory for America, claiming history will remember this moment forever. Not long after, Sophia rushes onto the battlefield despite others warning her that the behemoth's lingering energy is still dangerous. Baron calmly lets her pass, explaining that someone like her can handle it, unlike ordinary players who are already collapsing from the monster's remaining miasma. Even he admits it's unbelievable that she can stand so close to where the behemoth fell. Sophia immediately checks on Seong Ji-han and discovers that one of his arms has been completely ruined. She quickly begins using regeneration, warning that the behemoth's evil energy will make the healing process incredibly painful, but it's the only option. At that exact moment, the boss reward chest appears. Before Ji-han can even react, Baron casually tells him to step aside because he'll be handling the reward himself. The surrounding bystanders are furious, calling the guild nothing more than freeloaders. After all, Ji-han defeated the behemoth completely on his own, yet the entire guild surrounds the reward chest as if it naturally belongs to them, simply because they're supposedly humanity's last hope. Baron then announces that only members of America First will share the reward. Sophia immediately objects, pointing out that Ji-han was the one who killed the boss. So why is he being excluded? Baron's answer is brutally simple. To him, Ji-han isn't a real American. Even after becoming naturalized, he's nothing more than a useful dog. Ji-han quietly stops Sophia from arguing any further. Deep down, he already knows that's exactly how they've always seen him. Despite possessing the SSS rank skill, Nameless Divine Arts, a mysterious fragment capable of evolving by mastering the 3 divine theories or uncovering its true name, and despite using that incredible power to climb all the way to World Rank 7, he was never truly accepted. All he ever received was prejudice, xenophobia, and the crushing guilt of being the lone survivor after losing his homeland. So, with one arm still destroyed, he simply lowers his head, accepts the humiliation, and waits for the mission results, hoping at least his injuries will recover soon. Just when everyone thought the nightmare was finally over, the system coldly announced game over and began revealing the results of the Bronze League demotion match. The mission had been a defense-type battle, where victory required at least half of each nation's players to survive. Baron watched as the results rolled in one after another. The United States had cleared the mission. China had survived as well, but Russia had failed. Japan was eliminated too, followed by nation after nation. Before long, the horrifying truth became impossible to ignore. Out of the 10 remaining countries on Earth, only 2 had managed to survive. Humanity had officially lost. The system then declared that race 4212 had failed the demotion match. However, since another race had also failed, one final opportunity remained. Humanity would now fight a deciding match against race 4772, the Orcs. Most people had no idea what that meant, but Sophia immediately understood the danger. She urged Baron to bring Seong Ji-han, because their previous victory had only been possible thanks thanks to him. Baron completely dismissed the suggestion. Confident in his own strength, he claimed they could win without relying on Seong. A moment later, the representatives from both planets were summoned into a virtual arena. Humanity's side consisted of Baron and 4 other fighters, while only 4 orcs stood across from them. Seeing the numbers, Baron became even more confident. Even the Chinese ranker pointed out they had the advantage, convincing Baron that they could wipe out the orcs without Seong Jihan's help. Overflowing with arrogance, he unleashed his red lightning, declared himself humanity's representative, and charged straight at the enemy. Unfortunately, reality hit much harder than his ego. Before he could even react, a single orc intercepted him and, with one effortless swing, ripped his head clean off. The remaining fighters froze in absolute shock. Back on Earth, everyone watched the unbelievable scene unfold in horror. The world's #1 player had just been killed in a single attack. The system calmly announced Baron's death as panic erupted across the globe. The orcs didn't stop there. They charged forward and slaughtered the rest of humanity's representatives one after another, until only Sophia remained. Standing alone, Sophia desperately begged for mercy, but the orc leader showed none. Instead, he thanked humanity for being so weak, declaring that because of their failure, his race would survive instead. With one final strike, Sophia was killed as well. The match officially came to an end, and Humanity 4212 was declared defeated. Since there were no leagues beneath bronze, the system labeled humanity as a worthless race and expelled them from the Space League entirely. Immediately afterward, black voids began opening beneath people's feet across the entire planet. The holes rapidly spread throughout Earth as the world's annihilation began. Already heavily injured, Seong Jihan was dragged into the endless darkness along with everyone else. Inside that terrifying void, he finally realized what the system meant by elimination. The planet itself was being consumed from the inside out, its very mass collapsing into a black hole while humanity was torn apart, screaming as everything faded into darkness. Just as the system announced that humanity's elimination was complete, an unexpected error suddenly appeared. One human was still alive. Somehow, Seong Jihan had survived, or at least, he was still barely clinging to existence. Surrounded by a mysterious light, he realized that the nameless divine arts had resisted the world's annihilation. Even the system seemed surprised that his skill had protected him. As Jihan examined the ability more closely, he couldn't help wondering if everything might have turned out differently had he obtained its complete power just a little sooner. The system acknowledged that, although he was weak, he remained an existence filled with limitless potential, and even the smallest possibility deserved another chance. Jihan could only think about the people he had failed to save, imagining a future where Korea never fell and everyone he loved was still alive. The heavenly beings watching from above eventually reached the same conclusion. It would be a waste to let that potential disappear. After the votes were cast, the system announced that player Seong Jihan would be returned to the starting point of the league. Before he could understand what that meant, the endless darkness transformed into a pure white room. Moments later, he slowly opened his eyes. Instead of a battlefield, he found himself surrounded by empty liquor bottles with a pounding hangover. Still hearing the system's words echoing in his head, he looked around in disbelief as a shocking thought crossed his mind. Had he really returned to where everything first began? The story now shifts to South Korea in 2020. Seong Jihan watches children arguing over who gets to become the Sword King, while people all around them laugh, go on dates, and enjoy perfectly ordinary lives. For the first time, he truly believes he has returned to the past. Opening his status window, he confirms he's back at level 2, exactly where he was when he first entered the BattleNet League. Hope immediately fills him. This time, he remembers everything. If he uses the knowledge from his previous life, he can rewrite the future. No, he has to rewrite it. He refuses to let the world end the same way again. At this point, South Korea is still one of the strongest countries because it has Yoon Sejin, the legendary Sword King, a member of the top 11 and the world's third-ranked human. Thanks to him, Korea consistently ranks near the top of the East Asia League, but Seong knows that isn't where the story stays. Suddenly, the news broadcasts an announcement that shocks the entire country. Yoon Sejin reveals he's changing his name to Ryuhei, becoming a Japanese citizen, and joining Japan's new defense force in July 2020. It becomes one of the biggest betrayals in BattleNet Korea's history, and Seong realizes he has returned to the exact day it all began. The moment he sees Sejin's face, his anger instantly returns. After the Sword King's departure, South Korea's rankings collapsed. News reports question the country's future, while experts try reassuring everyone that the situation isn't hopeless. They claim Korea still has promising young players and should comfortably remain among the top 20 in the East Asia League. Seong already knows they're completely wrong. No one ever appears who can truly replace Yoon Sejin. Even if someone had the talent, there simply wasn't enough time because BattleNet soon transforms from a competitive game into the Space League, where matches become real battles for survival, and dying inside the game means dying in reality. Soon afterward, low-ranked monsters begin invading countries around the world and massacring innocent people. Without the Sword King, South Korea is unable to stop them. Looking back, every survivor reaches the same conclusion. If Yoon Sejin had remained in Korea, things might have turned out differently. To make matters worse, Sejin wasn't just Korea's greatest player, he was also Seong's brother-in-law. He married Seong's older sister before eventually abandoning everyone. Furious, Seong punches his photograph, still unable to understand why his sister ever fell for someone like that. Deep down, he also wonders whether everything could have changed if she had somehow survived. Once he calms himself, Seong admits it feels good to be back, but his current stats are absolutely terrible. Looking at them, he can't even complain because his younger self spent those days drinking and playing games instead of training. Back then, he never realized how valuable his F-rank gift, Wanderer's Eye, actually was. Since everyone receives the chance to become a player at 18 years old, only some are lucky enough to awaken a gift. Seong believed this was worthless, and only used it to analyze players before gambling on Battle.net matches. He had no idea its true power only appeared after awakening. Still, dwelling on the past won't help him now. With stats this low, he should still be level 1, yet somehow he's already level 2. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly remembers the experience potion. In his previous life, someone accidentally drank it and gained a level by mistake. A second later, he realizes that the embarrassing idiot had actually been himself, but another mystery quickly catches his attention. Somehow, he has 100,000 achievement points, which should be impossible since he hadn't accomplished anything before entering the league. Suspecting his regression changed something, he opens his inventory and is stunned to discover an EX rank exchange voucher. It turns out to be a special privilege awarded exclusively to the last survivor who chose to challenge fate once again. The voucher allows achievement points to be exchanged and cannot be transferred to anyone else. Using it immediately unlocks a hidden feature called the Conquest Shop. Even Seong is shocked because he never knew something like this existed. At shop level 1, it offers a shop upgrade, status window expansion, and an extra class slot. Thinking future upgrades might unlock even better rewards, he upgrades the shop instead of buying anything. Level 2 unlocks inventory expansion, so he upgrades again. Level 3 unlocks an extra title slot, but he can't use it yet, leaving him with only 50,000 points. Only then does he realize each upgrade costs more than the previous one. Reaching level 4 would leave him with just 10,000 points, making him hesitate between purchasing his unlocked upgrades or continuing to level the shop. True to his gambling instincts, he risks everything and upgrades the Conquest Shop to level 4 anyway. The gamble pays off immediately by unlocking Emergency Recovery, an incredible feature capable of restoring broken items. The moment he sees it, he knows the risk was worth taking. Sometimes gambling really does pay off. Without wasting another second, Seong heads toward a heavily secured player facility. After scanning his fingerprint, the system recognizes him as a family member and grants him access to the first player room. He's surprised it still identifies him as family, despite everything that happened in the future. Once inside, the inventory links directly to Battle.net, allowing him to retrieve the very first hidden treasure he planned to obtain, the broken brush of Dongfang Shuo. He immediately activates emergency recovery, and the shattered brush slowly repairs itself. Once the restoration is complete, 2 brilliant jewels appear as the artifact returns to its original SS rank form. The brush once belonged to a legendary figure who maintained a bond with it for 180,000 years. Just then, the system announces that the Battle.net League tutorial will begin in 10 seconds. With almost no time remaining, Seong quickly opens his status window and writes 2 special characters using the restored brush. He reveals that this exact technique was the secret behind reaching World Rank 7 and earning the title of Martial Saint during his previous life. The brush combines his strength, agility, and vitality into a unique stat known as martial power, something everyone overlooked because they believed the brush was nothing more than a broken relic. As the transformation finishes, Seong is transported into the tutorial arena. The first mission is straightforward. Survive the Colosseum by enduring both the monsters and the other 100 participants until only 50 players remain. The moment he arrives, he immediately checks his status, wondering whether martial power really transferred over. A smile appears when he confirms it worked. His 3 physical stats have successfully merged into 5 points of martial power. He also earns the unique tribute achievement, rewarding him with another 10,000 conquest points. Seong grins, knowing this is only the very first step toward reclaiming the nameless divine arts, but it's already enough to dominate the Bronze League. The system then warns him that he entered the match without connecting to a battle connector, meaning every ounce of pain he experiences will be completely real. That reminds him of something ridiculous from his previous life. Wealthy players could actually reduce in-game pain simply by purchasing better battle connectors, and Yoon Sejin owned one that reduced pain by 99%. Deciding to make full use of every new advantage, Seong opens his achievement window. Suddenly, an unlimited mission appears, something that never existed before. The objective is to finish first in the tutorial, rewarding him with 1,000 conquest points. Delighted by this unexpected opportunity, he confidently believes martial power makes the mission easy. But just as the tutorial officially begins, another participant suddenly appears behind him and swings a sword straight at his back. Seong instantly senses something wrong, calmly catches the blade between 2 fingers, turns around wearing a terrifying grin, and immediately decides the overconfident rookie has just become the perfect choice for his very first kill of this new life. Seong Jihan briefly explains how guilds, work. As more people around the world became involved with BattleNet, countries began pouring resources into training stronger players, while massive corporations started building organizations dedicated to producing elite talent. South Korea was no different. Large and small guilds quickly appeared across the country, and many of them were already producing exceptional rookies, even during the early days of the league. The battlefield they were currently standing in was the Gangnam Bronze League, the stage where every major guild sent its most promising newcomers to make their debut. As the system announced that the match would begin shortly, one nervous rookie tried calming himself down. His name was Do Hyuk-yu, a member of the prestigious Twin Star Guild, which was directly backed by the powerful Twin Star Group. Before receiving his gift, he had been nothing more than an ordinary teenager, but awakening an A-rank gift instantly changed his life. Since only a handful of people ever received an A-rank ability, he convinced himself that simply surviving until the top 50 would be easy. Looking around, he noticed players from major guilds already sizing each other up. Their expensive equipment alone was enough to tell him they weren't people he wanted to provoke. Staying alive was more important than acting brave. Then, his eyes landed on Seong Jihan. Wearing nothing but sweatpants and a sleeveless shirt, Seong looked completely out of place. To Do Hyuk-yu, he looked like the easiest free elimination imaginable. Delighted by his luck, he decided this would be his first victim. The instant the tutorial officially began, he rushed forward with his sword, convinced the fight would be over in a single strike. Instead, reality hit him much harder than expected. Seong casually stopped the incoming sword with nothing but 2 fingers, leaving Do Hyuk-yu completely speechless. He couldn't understand how anyone could block an attack backed by his A-rank agility so effortlessly. Before he could recover from the shock, Seong simply flicked the blade upward with those same 2 fingers, sending both the weapon and its owner stumbling backward. Calmly looking at the rookie, Seong mocked him for entering the Gangnam League with skills like that. The comment immediately offended Do Hyuk-yu, who proudly defended his A-rank agility. Seong's response made it clear he wasn't impressed at all. Enraged, the rookie poured even more aura into his sword before unleashing his fastest attacks. Even Seong admitted that, with his current level 2 body, the boy's speed was faster than his own physical abilities, but experience was an entirely different story. Compared to the countless life and death battles Seong had survived in his previous life, the rookie's attacks looked painfully predictable. Every slash, every movement, and every opening was obvious to him. He effortlessly dodged every swing by the smallest margin, calmly weaving around the attacks while quietly admitting to himself that adjusting to such a weak body wasn't easy. If he still possessed his old strength, this fight would have ended instantly. Frustrated beyond belief, Do Hyuk-yu desperately launched another strike, only for Seong to casually slap the sword aside, knocking it completely out of his hands. Before the rookie could even process what had happened, Seong leaped forward, caught the falling sword, landed behind him, and drove the blade straight through his neck. Even while dying, Do Hyuk-yu refused to believe he had been defeated so easily. His final thought was that he would surely win the next time they met, and strangely, realizing there could even be a next time made this world seem almost comforting. Just like that, Seong claimed the first elimination of the tutorial and earned 100 conquest points. He also notes that whenever a player dies, all of their equipment disappears along with them. Now that he had warmed up, he knew he needed to increase his pace. If he wanted to secure first place, 5 kills would probably be enough. As expected, everyone around him was still too focused on hunting other players to pay attention to the monsters roaming the arena. The tutorial counted both player and monster kills, but each monster was worth only 0.1 of a player kill, meaning 10 monsters were needed to equal a single elimination. Since the monsters, especially the orcs, traveled in dangerous groups, most participants considered hunting them a complete waste of time. Then the system suddenly issued another mission: annihilate the orc group. Around 30 orcs, the strongest monster pack in the Colosseum, had to be wiped out completely in exchange for 500 achievement points. Seeing that the reward was 5 times larger than the first kill bonus, Seong accepted without hesitation. Compared to the real orcs he had fought during humanity's war for survival, these creatures were nothing more than practice targets. Without a hint of fear, he charged directly toward them. The orcs stared in confusion as a nearly unarmed human sprinted straight at their formation before immediately hurling their axes to kill him. Seong calmly caught the incoming weapons and threw them right back, killing several orcs instantly. Panic spread through the group. Before they could react, Seong had already appeared in the middle of their formation. Swinging a single axe, he cut down several more enemies at once. One terrified orc recklessly charged him, prompting the rest of the pack to swarm him together. By then, 5 had already fallen. Holding only one axe, Seong carved through the charging monsters one after another without even changing his position. When another spear flew toward him, he caught it effortlessly, snapped it in half with one hand, and mocked the orcs for loudly announcing every sneak attack. He rushed the frightened attacker, but the worn-out axe shattered against the creature's wooden shield, leaving only the handle behind. Rather than panicking, Seong complained that their cheap weapons weren't even worth using. Thinking they finally had an advantage, the remaining orcs charged him all at once. Seong simply stomped the ground with overwhelming force, launching the entire group into the air. Before they could land, he grabbed the weapons still floating around him and turned them against their owners, slaughtering nearly the entire pack in a single, relentless assault. Spears flew from one body to another, leaving nothing but a trail of corpses behind. The last surviving orc could only wonder whether Seong was actually the real monster before losing his head as well. With that, the orc annihilation mission was complete. Seong received the achievement point reward and even leveled up in the middle of the battle, something that normally shouldn't happen until after the tutorial ended. He assumed it was only possible because his level was still so low. Either way, it worked in his favor. After leveling up, Seong immediately invested his stat points into martial power, the unique attribute that combined strength, agility, and vitality into a single balanced stat. Not only was martial power at least twice as effective as raising ordinary stats, but reaching 30 martial power was also the key requirement for opening the path toward the nameless divine arts. Normally, martial power couldn't be increased by simply spending points. Players had to earn it through real combat experience and relentless training, while stat points merely improved their aptitude for future growth. However, the moment Seong invested his points, martial power actually increased. Even he couldn't hide his surprise. He had no idea why it worked differently after his regression, but if it continued like this, reclaiming his former strength would become dramatically easier. Just as Seong was thinking about how much easier things had become, another attack came flying his way. A nearby archer had already locked onto him and fired an arrow. Seong noticed it immediately and dodged, making him wonder for a second if that had been a magic arrow. The girl looked genuinely excited that someone had managed to avoid her shot, while the tank, fighting beside her, brushed it off as nothing more than luck. She reminded him they didn't have much time left, so they needed to finish Seong quickly. The tank agreed, and jokingly reminded her about their deal, saying the kill wouldn't automatically belong to whoever landed the final blow. Seeing them coordinate so naturally, Seong realized they had formed an alliance. Even though the tutorial was designed to leave only one survivor, there was nothing stopping players from working together until the very end. Judging from the emblem on their equipment, he recognized them as members of one of South Korea's top 10 guilds, the Turtle Guild. Their team composition also made perfect sense. One specialized in close-range combat, while the other covered long-range attacks. Since they belonged to the same guild, they were already accustomed to fighting as partners. Right then, the system announced that only 60 survivors remained, and the tutorial would soon come to an end. Seong was surprised the number had dropped so quickly, and realized that simply avoiding battles would now be enough to survive. Unfortunately for the two guild members, they had already chosen him as their target because of his unimpressive appearance. To make things even more ridiculous, the tank casually turned his back on Seong and started flirting with the archer, promising to hand her the kill if she agreed to have dinner with him afterward. She immediately rejected the offer without hesitation. Meanwhile, Seong quietly checked the rankings and saw he was sitting in first place with 4 kills, while second place only had 3. That gap wasn't safe enough, so he decided to use this fight to secure an even bigger lead. While the archer continued lecturing her partner for flirting at a time like this, Seong suddenly disappeared from where he had been standing. Before either of them could react, he was already beside the archer. Curious to see how much stronger level 6 martial power had made him, he struck her down in a single effortless attack. At almost the same moment, 2 other players elsewhere in the arena died, dropping the survivor count to 58. The tank completely lost his composure, unable to understand how Seong had reached his partner so quickly. Instead of focusing on the fact that they had both come here intending to kill him, he actually complained about Seong attacking a woman. Seong paid absolutely no attention to the hypocrisy. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind the tank and slammed a heavy blow directly into his back. This time, the man actually felt the impact, but something immediately seemed off to Seong. Smirking confidently, the tank explained that he was wearing an exclusive B-rank armor set, issued by the Turtle Guild. According to him, armor like that made him practically untouchable, and a battered weapon like Seong's wasn't capable of breaking through it. Seong didn't waste time arguing. Instead, he calmly attacked the exact same spot over and over again. Every single strike landed in precisely the same place, gradually cracking the armor, while the tank became more frantic with each hit. Before long, Seong completely punched through the supposedly indestructible B-rank equipment. Looking at the stunned warrior, he coldly remarked that it didn't matter whether his opponent was hiding behind expensive armor or whether he had been fighting alongside a woman. Anyone who entered the tutorial, treating it like a game instead of a battlefield, was nothing but trash. Since the tank wanted to stand there so confidently, Seong decided he could stay exactly where he was a little longer. Moments later, he finished him off without the slightest hesitation. At the same time, Lee Haeyeon and Lim Gaeong are watching the battle unfold from afar. After seeing Seong effortlessly wipe out his opponents, Haeyeon admits that the performance was seriously impressive, but more importantly, she's relieved he wasn't summoned anywhere near her. Otherwise, she believes she might have been eliminated, and never managed to hold on to second place in the rankings. Hearing that, Lim Gaeyong doesn't seem convinced. Sensing her reaction, Haeyeon gives her a serious warning. If they ever end up in the same match as that mysterious player, she must stay away from him. But before Lim can simply agree, Haeyeon changes her instructions. Avoiding him isn't enough. If there's no other choice, she must either lose to him or defeat him first, but above all, she has to gather as much information about him as possible. Lim accepts the order, though she can't shake the feeling that the boy looks strangely familiar, as if she's seen him somewhere before. Not long afterward, she demonstrates the incredible blade technique that made her famous, filling the battlefield with Sakura-like petals. Possessing an S-rank gift, she had been aggressively recruited by the Twin Star Guild and quickly surpassed everyone's expectations after entering the league. She was supposed to hold on to first place for a long time, but Seong's sudden appearance completely turned those expectations upside down. Even Seong himself finds it amusing that he's currently sitting at rank 1 despite only being level 2, having no guild, no proper equipment, and fighting in nothing but worn-out clothes while barefoot. Watching from a distance, even members of the Turtle Guild struggle to believe someone in that condition could already have 6 kills. They can't understand how someone with no gear and no support could possibly dominate the tutorial like this, while Seong continues eliminating players as if it were nothing. After returning home, the system officially announces that Seong finished the tutorial in first place. As a reward, his experience gain permanently increases by 50%, allowing him to jump 3 levels and reach level 6. Since early levels require very little experience, that kind of growth isn't unusual. The system also points out that GP isn't included as part of the tutorial rewards. Without wasting time, Seong spends all of his available stat points on martial power, raising it to 9. After that, he checks the title he earned for clearing the tutorial. Besides granting 20% additional experience inside the league, the bronze title also increases all of his basic stats by 1 point. Looking over the rewards, he's more than satisfied. With 10 martial power, the entire Bronze League should be manageable, and since promotion to the Silver League doesn't happen until level 25, his only priority for now is becoming stronger as quickly as possible. While checking his status, Seong suddenly remembers something important. He still hasn't selected a class. Since basic classes unlock at level 5, the option is now available. Every classless player eventually reaches this moment, and the 4 standard choices are Warrior, Archer, Mage, and Support. During his previous life, Seong chose the Warrior class, making it the path he understood better than anyone else. Picking it again would definitely make his progress much smoother. However, regression gave him access to the achievement shop, meaning he can simply purchase the Warrior class later for 10,000 achievement points whenever he wants. Realizing he no longer needs to follow the same path as before, he finally chooses the class he believes he should have selected from the very beginning. Not long afterward, Seong enters another Bronze League Gangnam match. This time, the mission type is Defense, where players must protect the crystal positioned behind them on top of a tower. From above, Lim Gaeyong overlooks an enormous sea of zombies stretching across the battlefield. Before long, all 5 towers will come under attack by the endless undead horde. She notices that she ended up choosing the warrior class once again, and can't help thinking the zombies look absolutely disgusting, with their rotting bodies, drooling mouths, and barely functioning limbs. More players soon arrive at the tower. The group behind her acts overly confident, complaining that they ended up with this map before discussing their defensive formation. Lim quietly evaluates her teammates one by one. She spots an archer wearing B-rank equipment from the LK Guild, along with a mage who doesn't belong to any guild, despite carrying excellent gear. So far, the lineup looks fairly solid, but to her, the most important role in any defense mission is the support, since those battles always become long wars of attrition. Moments later, the support player lands with a loud impact. The instant Lim sees who it is, she freezes in disbelief. Standing there in nothing but plain workout clothes is none other than Seong Ji-han. The others are equally confused. Out of every class available, he actually chose support. About 20 minutes earlier, just before entering the match, the system repeatedly warned Seong that the class he had chosen wasn't suited for him. It even asked him to confirm the decision one last time. Seong ignored every warning because he had only one reason for making that choice. Once the selection was finalized, he officially became a support. To everyone else, it looked like a terrible decision, but Seong knew something nobody else did. Choosing the support class unlocked the divine power stat, and that stat was the key to awakening another unique attribute in the future. The problem was that divine power was notoriously difficult to increase. Unlike ordinary stats, training barely improved it, and the only reliable method most players knew was spending precious achievement points. Since Seong was already investing everything into martial power, wasting points on divine power was out of the question. Fortunately, he already knew a hidden method that no one else had discovered. Back in the present, Lim Gaeyong stares at Seong in disbelief after realizing he really chose the support class. The guildless mage beside her immediately bursts into laughter, calling the decision completely insane. He complains that this is exactly why he hated the tutorial season. Looking at Seong's worn-out workout clothes and lack of proper equipment, he mocks him as nothing but dead weight. After spending so much money on high-end gear, he has no intention of carrying someone who looks completely useless. Another teammate tries to calm him down, but the mage refuses to stop, insisting that anyone could see what a disaster Seong was. He even declares that he wants nothing to do with the team and claims he can handle everything by himself. Watching the whole scene, Lim quietly thinks the man is far too loud and can't believe she ended up grouped with such an annoying troll. Before the battle has even started, she already feels like the mission has become much more difficult. Then, the entire tower suddenly falls silent. Without saying a word, Seong grabs the arrogant mage with one hand and lifts him into the air. The man immediately panics, screaming for Seong to let him go. Since talking clearly isn't working, Seong simply throws him straight off the tower and into the massive zombie horde below. Everyone can only stare in complete shock. As the mage desperately asks why he would do something like that, Seong calmly replies that the team will do just fine without him. The man's confidence disappears instantly. The moment he revives, he comes back, begging for another chance, and promises he'll cooperate from now on. Seong recognizes him as Kim Gyu-hyuk, and already knows exactly why his attitude changed so quickly. In Bronze League defense missions, every player receives 3 lives. Since Kim has only died once, Seong casually throws him off the tower again. After the second death, Kim is left with just 1 remaining life, meaning one more mistake will eliminate him for good. Now completely terrified, Kim desperately swears he'll do his best and begs Seong not to kill him again. On top of that, he absolutely cannot afford to finish in last place, because doing so would reduce his level. Since he had spent a fortune purchasing one of his skills, losing a level and no longer meeting its requirements would cause that skill to disappear completely. Seong can't help pointing out how dramatically Kim's attitude has changed in only a few moments. Even then, Kim still tries to prove his value by casting another spell. Seong effortlessly deflects the incoming magic and calmly comments that Kim's fire control is actually quite impressive. Kim quickly confirms he's a fire mage, proudly explaining that fire mages are especially effective on zombie defense maps like this. Finally, he reminds Seong that he's already level 15, implying it would be a waste to lose such a valuable teammate. Watching everything from the tower, Lim Gae-yong finally remembers where she had seen the loud mage before. He was Kim Gyu-hyuk, a mage once considered promising enough to join one of Korea's top 10 guilds. Unfortunately, he failed to earn promotion to the Silver League 4 different times. After that, his career completely fell apart, and he became nothing more than a notorious troublemaker. Realizing who he is, Seong immediately relaxes a little. Now that he understands Kim's personality, dealing with him becomes much easier. Even after dying twice, however, Kim still has one condition before helping the team. He demands an apology for being thrown off the tower. The polite teammate quickly tries to smooth things over, saying that's good enough and everyone should simply work together from now on. Kim, however, can't let it go. Still furious, he warns Seong that next time he'll be the one dying. Hearing that, Seong quietly grabs him by the collar again and calmly asks whether he really wants that apology. Before Kim can even respond, Seong swings him through the air like a baseball bat and throws him straight back into the zombie horde below. The mage dies for a 3rd time, completely using up his final life. Without the slightest concern, Seong simply tells the others to get moving and remarks that maybe Kim will learn some manners next time. The polite teammate stands there completely speechless, unable to believe Seong actually eliminated his own teammate, and silently deciding he wants absolutely nothing to do with someone this terrifying. As everyone is still processing what just happened, the zombie assault finally begins. Undead creatures start climbing the walls of every tower. At a neighboring tower, a fire mage immediately incinerates large groups of zombies, earning praise from his teammates. His destructive power is exactly what everyone expects from a fire specialist, and people jokingly comment that if he keeps this up, they might as well relax and roast marshmallows. Back on Seong's tower, the blonde warrior can't help complaining that this is exactly why they needed a mage. He blames Seong for letting his pride get in the way and asks how they're supposed to defend the tower now. Seong completely ignores the complaints and instead opens his status window. A new chain mission appears, requiring him to finish first among all 10 towers for a reward of 1,000 achievement points. Even he pauses after seeing that objective. Then another mission appears. This one requires him to personally kill 1,000 zombies in exchange for 3,000 achievement points. The requirement sounds almost impossible within the time limit, but the reward is simply too valuable to ignore. While Seong quietly considers his options, Lim continues observing him. Looking at his terrible stats and the fact that he voluntarily chose the support class, she concludes he isn't even worth recruiting into the Twin Star Guild. To her, he looks like a reckless player making one bad decision after another. The blonde warrior eventually loses his patience and demands an answer, asking if Seong is simply ignoring everyone. If he insists on acting alone, then why not fight alone? Seong calmly asks whether he's truly okay with that idea. The warrior confidently says yes, making Seong realize keeping all the zombies for himself would actually make completing the mission much easier. Before he can move, however, Lim steps forward and announces she'll defend the front line while ordering the support to remain safely in the rear. Even if the team is a complete mess, she still intends to fulfill her role properly. Seong simply tells her not to worry, because he'll handle everything himself. He even instructs the warrior to stay behind and focus solely on protecting the archer. While they're still arguing over the plan, a blood zombie, easily recognizable by its enormous swollen head, climbs onto the tower. The blonde warrior immediately warns everyone that blood zombies are completely different from normal undead. Their liquid-like bodies make ordinary physical attacks almost useless, meaning they require the opposite type of power to defeat. Before anyone can react, the monster lunges directly at Song. Without panicking, he raises nothing more than a simple metal rod and smashes straight through the creature, instantly bursting it apart. As pieces of the blood zombie scatter across the tower, Lim watches in complete disbelief. Surrounding the attack is a pure white sacred flame, making her realize Seong had just used divine power. Seong's true objective quickly becomes clear. Rather than relying on only one class, he's trying to combine the strengths of both martial power and divine power into a single fighting style. As wave after wave of zombies charges toward the tower, he cuts through them using nothing but the metal rod before jumping directly into the horde below and demonstrating unbelievable staff techniques. Even he admits he doesn't know whether killing 1,000 zombies is actually possible, but the reward is worth attempting. By the time he climbs back onto the tower, his personal count has already reached 6 kills, though he still has a very long way to go. He dives back into the undead once again, crushing zombies one after another, with most falling in a single strike. The number quickly climbs to 26, but Seong realizes ordinary attacks still won't work properly against the blood zombies. Instead, he decides to gather them together first, before slowly releasing his divine power to destroy them all at once. Watching from the tower, the others are left speechless. The blonde warrior completely changes his opinion, deciding that if Seong is this ridiculously strong, then a rough personality hardly matters. Someone like him deserves respect. Lim is even more shocked by something else entirely. Seong controls his divine power with flawless precision, wasting almost none of it, something that shouldn't even be possible. On top of that, every single strike lands perfectly on a zombie's head. One after another, the undead continue collapsing until Seong finally reaches 210 kills, fulfilling another hidden condition. The system announces that his understanding of the otherworld relic has deepened, raising his divine power to 7. Smiling to himself, Seong realizes he has accidentally discovered an entirely new method for increasing divine power. To him, this hidden technique is absolutely perfect. As he recalls, relics are nothing more than sacred items waiting to reveal their true potential. While cutting through the zombie horde, Seong remembers something Sophia once told him. Back in 2010, when Earth's tutorial first began, otherworld relics were sold for absurd prices because everyone believed they hid some incredible secret. But after 10 years of searching, nobody discovered anything, so their value steadily collapsed. The particular relic Seong was using had become so worthless that most players didn't even know it existed anymore. Sophia, however, had revealed that she raised her divine power using an otherworld relic. Since she was America's third-ranked player, Seong took her words seriously. At the time, he was stunned by the revelation. Sophia explained that her divine power evolved because of the relic, but only while the tutorial period was still active. Once the tutorial ended, the method no longer worked. When Seong questioned whether that was really possible, she simply pointed out that it was exactly how she became a saint. According to her, repeatedly using an otherworld relic under its specific conditions allowed divine power to grow, although every relic had its own unique requirement. Seong couldn't believe such a simple method remained almost completely unknown. Sophia explained that even if someone heard rumors about it, otherworld relics were incredibly rare, making it nearly impossible to verify the information. She had quietly gathered those relics for herself during the tutorial, while no one else understood their true purpose. She also revealed one final piece of exclusive information. There was one other player secretly buying up otherworld relics. Seong immediately guessed that person must have discovered the same secret. After returning to the Sword Palace penthouse in his previous life, Seong had carefully recorded everything Sophia told him. Looking back through those notes, he realized almost every relic she owned had already been emptied because their divine power had been completely absorbed. That explained everything. The mysterious collector Sophia mentioned turned out to be none other than Seong Jia, his own sister. Alongside Yoon Sejin, she had been recognized as one of South Korea's finest support players and a true national hero. Sadly, her death was already part of history. Thinking back to the relics she left behind, Seong remembered discovering the simple metal rod he was currently using. Its description clearly stated that striking the heads of Eretz would increase divine power. The method couldn't have been simpler. Although the relic had already lost its divine power and even dropped in rank, it remained incredibly durable, making it the perfect weapon for smashing enemies. Watching Seong fight, Lim Gaeyong admits that his physical combat ability alone is already unbelievable, but what truly shocks her is his flawless control over divine power. That level of precision shouldn't even be possible. The blonde warrior is equally amazed, pointing out that despite another tower losing its warrior entirely, their own team has already climbed to rank 5. Then he suddenly realizes they have been standing around watching while Seong fights alone. Before he can react, Lim barely saves him from being bitten by a zombie. Still clearing the battlefield, Seong glances back at Lim and finally realizes why she seems so familiar. She is the legendary Plum Blossom Sword, Lim Gaeyong herself. In the future, she would become one of the strongest candidates to inherit the title of Sword King, only for her story to end tragically when she was eventually killed by Yoon Se-jin. Looking at her now, Seong quietly wonders whether he might accidentally end up changing that fate as well. Lim then calls out to him, asking if she can join the battle. She believes that if they fight together, they still have a chance to climb even higher in the rankings. Seong checks his status window and sees that he has already reached 398 kills, with the team sitting at rank 5. Time is running short, and there is still a long way to go. Even so, if she truly is the future Plum Blossom Sword, then she is more than capable of contributing. He agrees, instructing her to defend the upper section while he handles everything below. Before either Lim or the blonde warrior can respond, Seong jumps straight off the tower. Both of them can only stare with their mouths hanging open. As he falls, Seong pours divine power into the metal rod, activates the relic's ability, forces the energy to gather together, and detonates it the instant he lands. A massive shockwave erupts across the battlefield, blasting huge numbers of undead into the air. The blonde warrior watches in complete disbelief. Thanks to that overwhelming attack, their tower climbs to first place. They successfully clear the defense mission, and Seong also completes the chain quest, requiring him to finish first among all 10 towers. When the battle ends, Seong is far more interested in the rewards than the celebration. To him, the effort was completely worth it, especially since he ended up killing 1,500 zombies, far exceeding the original requirement of 1,000. As everyone leaves the battlefield, the blonde warrior rushes over, repeatedly thanking Seong for carrying the entire team and promising that one day, after becoming stronger, he'll be able to fight alongside him properly. Seong, meanwhile, is already wondering whether that special mission will appear again in future matches. The blonde enthusiastically asks to team up next time, while Lim remains frozen in disbelief. An unaffiliated player, a support, and someone at an even lower level than herself had completely dominated the battlefield. She honestly starts questioning whether BattleNet itself had bugged out. As Seong prepares to leave, Lim quickly stops him. Since she represents the Twin Star Guild, she knows someone with his talent must be recruited immediately. Trying to invite him into the guild, she nervously asks for his phone number, before even explaining why, instantly realizing she completely skipped the introduction she had rehearsed in her head. Embarrassed, she hurriedly explains that she's from the Twin Star Guild, and that this is actually a recruitment offer. Seong simply refuses. His reason is somehow even stranger than the rejection itself. He calmly says he doesn't remember his own phone number at the moment. The answer leaves Lim completely speechless. Before walking away, Seong casually tells her that if they happen to meet again, he'll let her know. Standing there alone, Lim can only wonder what kind of excuse "I forgot my phone number" is, before the embarrassing realization finally hits her. She had just been rejected. Back in reality, Seong remains surprisingly calm after the awkward encounter with Lim Gaeyong. Thinking about it more carefully, he realizes he really wasn't lying. After spending so many years using an American phone number, he genuinely can't remember his old Korean one anymore. Besides, asking someone else for his own number would be pretty ridiculous. Still, that isn't what matters most. The important part is that he already received a recruitment offer, which means his performance definitely caught people's attention. He could have easily asked for Lim's number as well, but since he has no intention of joining any guild right now, there was no reason to. Instead, he opens his status window to check his rewards. His level has increased by 2. He earned 1,500 GP, and his divine power improved as well. Overall, he's satisfied with the results. Hoping to spend those points on another relic, he opens the GP shop, only to discover that 1,500 GP isn't nearly enough. Even though relics are cheaper in 2020 than they would be in the future, they're still far beyond what he can currently afford. Left with no better option, Seong decides to return home and search through his sister's storage room once again. The moment he steps inside the house, something immediately feels different. His eyes slowly drift toward a pair of shoes near the entrance, and he freezes. His heart begins to race as countless emotions hit him all at once. After living through 2 lifetimes, Seong carries more regrets than anyone should. Above all else, the greatest burden he has ever carried is failing to protect someone precious. As he stands there in disbelief, a familiar voice suddenly greets him. A young girl casually asks whether he's finally awake and wonders if his hangover has gotten any better. Hearing that voice almost overwhelms him. During his previous life, there were countless things he wished he could have said. If he had ever been given another chance to see her, he wanted to apologize. He wanted to tell her everything, but before he can say any of it, she simply reassures him that everything will be okay. Watching her stand there so confidently, Seong quietly acknowledges how strong she has always been. She proudly agrees, insisting that's exactly why she'll be the one protecting him instead. Those words only deepen the guilt weighing on his heart. In silence, he apologizes to himself for failing to protect both her and her mother after being asked to trust them. Losing them had completely broken him, and no matter how selfish it feels, seeing her alive again is the one miracle he never believed he would receive. Breaking the emotional silence, she casually tells him to stop standing around and come inside to wash his hands. That cheerful smile belongs to Yoon Se-ah, the 17-year-old daughter of Seong Ji-ah, and Seong's beloved niece. Still struggling to believe she's really standing in front of him, Seong asks whether she already returned from Jeju. Se-ah explains that she came back earlier than everyone else. Looking at her brings back countless memories of raising her while his older sister was constantly busy working. After losing his own parents when he was still a child, Se-ah eventually became the only real family he had left. She then mentions that everyone keeps talking about her father. Curious, Seong asks whether Yoon Se-jin called. She quietly says he did, but there was something else. According to Se-ah, her father confessed that he had fallen in love with another woman. Seong immediately understands the rest without needing another explanation. That alone tells her everything she needs to know. Shocked, Se-ah asks the question she had been avoiding all along. Was her father really abandoning her and leaving? Seong calmly confirms it. The other woman had only accepted Yoon Se-jin's feelings on the condition that he left everything behind. Hearing that truth leaves Se-ah speechless, while Seong can barely contain his rage toward the man who abandoned not only his country, but also his own daughter. Even now, remembering how much innocent Se-ah suffered because of that selfish decision makes his anger burn all over again. A few moments later, Se-ah notices the broken picture frame and asks if Seong was the one who smashed it. He honestly admits it and apologizes, explaining that he simply lost control because he was so angry. After all, no matter what happened, the man in that picture is still her father. Maybe he really had gone too far. To his surprise, Se-ah walks over, punches the already broken frame again, and shatters it even further. She quietly admits she had wanted to do the exact same thing herself. Then she tells her uncle not to apologize because she's genuinely okay. Watching her smile through all that pain reminds Seong that she's always been like this, even after losing her mother. Even after being abandoned by her father, she always hid her own feelings and worried about everyone else instead. But things are different now. Pulling her into a warm hug, Seong gently tells her how much she's grown, joking that she has even learned how to take care of her own uncle. At the same time, he silently makes himself a promise. This time, no matter what happens, he will protect her. He asks her not to keep forcing herself to stay strong all the time. For the first time, Se-ah finally lets her guard down a little and quietly thanks him. Then, almost immediately, she wrinkles her nose and points out that he absolutely reeks of alcohol, leaving Seong with no choice but to admit she isn't wrong. Meanwhile, back at the Twin Star Guild, Lee Hae-on can't stop laughing after hearing what happened between Lim Gae-young and Seong Ji-han. Embarrassed beyond belief, Gae-young tells her to either stop laughing or commit to it properly. That only makes Hae-on laugh even harder. She admits the situation is serious, but it's also unbelievably funny. She simply can't believe Seong rejected Gae-young with the excuse that he forgot his own phone number. To Hae-on, that's one of the worst excuses she's ever heard. Gae-young, however, genuinely blames herself. She insists first impressions are everything and claims she's nothing like Hae-on. According to her, she's not even pretty and actually looks more like a man. Hearing that instantly wipes the smile off Hae-on's face. She realizes Gae-young is being completely serious. Hae-on quickly reminds her how popular she actually is. Everywhere Gae-young goes, people whisper about the legendary Plum Blossom sword, while countless guys work up the courage to ask for her number before chickening out because they're convinced she'll reject them anyway. Hae-on even warns her never to say things like that in public because people would be furious hearing someone as admired as Gae-young talk so negatively about herself. After entering the room, Hae-on comments that it's just as comfortable as always. Gae-young then asks the obvious question, does Hae-on really intend to recruit Seong Ji-han? Without hesitation, Hae-on says she has no choice. No matter what the guild elders think or what methods she has to use, she absolutely has to bring him into Twin Star. The pressure from above is already driving her crazy, and even Gae-young agrees that someone with Seong's talent simply can't be allowed to slip away. Right then, Hae-on notices a notification on her phone. Someone has suddenly started a live stream. Even though there isn't an important BattleNet match taking place today, Gae-young immediately teases her, asking if she's watching gambling streams again. Hae-on quickly fires back, insisting it's strategy analysis, not gambling. Gae-young clearly isn't buying that excuse, but the moment they check the stream, both of them freeze. The person broadcasting isn't just anyone, it's Seong Ji-han. On camera, Seong calmly checks whether the stream has started properly, before asking Yoon Se-ah to step back for a moment. Once she's safely out of the way, he channels holy power into his leg and kicks straight into the base of the massive Sword King's memorial statue, completely destroying it. As if smashing the foundation weren't enough, he follows up by repeatedly punching the monument, reducing the famous sword even further into rubble. Viewers watching through BattleTube are left completely speechless. The livestream instantly explodes with likes, dislikes, and thousands of comments. The internet practically catches fire as people struggle to believe someone just destroyed the Sword King statue with nothing but his bare hands. Feeling much better after venting his anger, Seong announces that he's about to explain his stance on the Sword King's naturalization. The story briefly explains that BattleTube is Battle.net's dedicated streaming platform, where players can earn achievement points and other rewards based on things like viewers, subscribers, and overall popularity. Chong realizes this controversy is the perfect opportunity to farm those rewards, especially while using his status as the Sword King's former brother-in-law. The stream immediately attracts a massive audience, including 10,000 dislikes, while countless viewers flood the chat asking whether he really destroyed the monument himself. Watching the reactions, Seong isn't surprised in the slightest. If stirring up outrage earns rewards, then maybe Yoon Sejin's reputation is finally useful for something. More achievement notifications continue pouring in until one particular comment catches Seong's attention. The account uses the twin sword symbol, immediately identifying it as a member of the Sword King's fan club. Seeing that emblem brings back one of the darkest memories of his previous life. Those same fanatics were ultimately responsible for Yoon Se's death. At first, they had supported her more than anyone else, but over time, admiration twisted into hatred. They convinced themselves that the Sword King abandoned Korea because of his own daughter's supposed sins. Eventually, they began claiming that Yoon Se had to die if they ever wanted the Sword King to return. In the end, they actually murdered her. Remembering that tragedy, Song quietly decides that if those people need someone to direct their hatred toward this time, then he'll gladly become their target instead. Looking directly into the camera, he tells everyone to pay close attention before punching the broken statue one last time. Then he bluntly declares that the Sword King will never be returning. The chat instantly erupts with furious insults and endless questions. Without hesitating, Seong tells everyone he's about to reveal an unedited recording of the final conversation between Ryuhei and his own daughter after he changed his nationality. The recording plays exactly as it happened. Yoon Sejin openly admits he fell in love with another woman and abandoned everything because accepting his love was the condition she gave him. Seiya asks whether that woman was really worth leaving both his family and his country behind, and he calmly answers yes. Once the recording ends, Seiya steps forward herself. Looking straight into the camera, she admits that, as the Sword King's daughter, she's just as shocked and confused by everything as everyone else. Then she makes an announcement that leaves the audience stunned. Her father intends to leave the Sword Palace to her, but she refuses to accept anything from someone who abandoned both his family and his homeland. Instead, she declares that she will donate the entire Sword Palace building to the nation, hoping it will help support and develop future Korean players. She adds that the complete details of the donation can be discussed later. The story briefly rewinds 30 minutes earlier, when Seong first told Yoon Se about his plan to donate the Sword Palace. Naturally, she thought he had completely lost his mind. Since he didn't even seem drunk, she couldn't understand why he would suggest giving away a building worth an unimaginable fortune instead of selling it. Seong assured her he was perfectly sober, but deep down, he knew convincing her wouldn't be easy. After all, how could he possibly explain that he had already lived through this future once before? He couldn't tell her the truth, so he simply tried to persuade her. The real reason was something only he knew. After Yoon Sejin later crushed Korea while fighting for Japan, the public's hatred toward him exploded. Eventually, the Korean government confiscated everything he owned, including the Sword Palace. With nowhere left to live, Seiya became the target of endless harassment and the Sword King's fan club, whose obsession eventually drove her to take her own life. Song had no intention of allowing history to repeat itself. If the property was destined to be taken away anyway, then he would willingly hand it over first, earning public support while protecting Seiya from becoming the center of everyone's hatred. At first, Seiya could only see the same unemployed, alcoholic uncle she had always known, so she quietly questioned whether he was really serious. When she realized he genuinely meant every word, she calmly agreed. Her answer completely surprised Seong. When he asked if she was truly okay with such a ridiculous decision, she simply replied that he had never been the type to make such a request without having a reason. More importantly, she admitted it had been a very long time since she had seen her uncle look this confident. Hearing those words left Seong completely speechless. Looking at her now in the present, he can't help thinking she really is an incredible girl. Back during the live stream, achievement notifications continue pouring in while Song silently thinks through his next move. If all of the hatred stays focused on him, then maybe those fanatics will finally leave Seiya alone. To make sure of it, he decides to provoke them even further. Looking directly into the camera, he addresses Yoon Sejin, saying that perhaps everything turned out this way for the best. Although Sejin claimed he abandoned Korea because of another woman, Seong insists that anyone who truly knew him would understand the real reason. Hearing that, Seiya immediately becomes nervous because this wasn't part of the plan they discussed. Ignoring her concern, Song continues speaking directly to his former brother-in-law, asking wherever he is whether he honestly believes nobody knows why he fled to Japan. According to Seong, Sejin ran because he lacked the confidence to continue living in Korea. That statement shocks everyone watching. He then openly warns Sejin that the moment they meet again in Japan, he'll personally bring him down. To make the declaration even more dramatic, he tears off his sleeve and throws out a direct challenge. The broadcast instantly sends both Korea and Japan into complete chaos. Later, after returning home, Seiya quietly asks whether he really needed to go that far. Song simply tells her not to worry about the public reaction and leave the chaos to him. Still, she can't shake the feeling that something about him has completely changed overnight. Jokingly, Song wonders how anyone could possibly stay the same after dying once and returning to the past. He quickly laughs it off before she can question that strange comment, asking whether he had really looked like nothing more than a washed-up alcoholic lately. Before the conversation can continue, the doorbell suddenly rings. Both of them instinctively tense up. While Seiya wonders who could possibly be visiting, Seong isn't surprised at all. In fact, he was expecting this. Calmly reassuring his niece, he tells her not to worry because it's finally time to make some money. Meanwhile, over in Tokyo, people discuss how relations between Korea and Japan are becoming even worse after the Sword King's decision to change his nationality. Everyone agrees Korea has every reason to be furious after losing its strongest player. Beside Yoon Sejin, Shizuru gently asks whether everything happening is bothering him. Sejin casually asks if she has only just woken up, and she replies that she's already had enough rest. Instead, she's more concerned about how much pressure he's carrying. Sejin then tells her she no longer needs to call him Sejin because he has chosen to live as Ryuhei now. Shizuru immediately refuses. To her, he'll always remain Sejin the Sword King and Korea's former #1 ranked player. Looking him in the eyes, she says nothing can ever change that truth before softly confessing her love and kissing him with genuine affection. Back at the Sword Palace, Song opens the front door to find exactly the person he expected waiting outside. The visitor politely greets him, surprised that Song almost seems to have predicted his arrival. With complete confidence, Song explains that after causing such a massive public incident, it was only natural for the government to send someone. He even recognizes the visitor immediately as Park Yoon-sik, a section chief. After Yoon Sejin abandoned Korea, Park had become one of the officials most heavily involved in handling everything connected to the Sword Palace. Even Seiya politely greets him before Park gets straight to the point. Although he admits Song's livestream was certainly extreme, he also says he personally liked it because it finally forced the government to reach a conclusion. They could no longer keep hoping the Sword King would return. With tensions between Korea and Japan continuing to rise, delaying the issue any longer simply wasn't possible. Seong impatiently tells him to skip the formalities and get to the point. Park finally explains that the government wishes to take control of the Sword Palace. Once that happens, the public will likely accept that the Sword King truly isn't coming back. Even Park is surprised by how accurately Seong predicted the government's response, wondering whether this confident man could really be the same unemployed gambler he remembered. However, there is one condition. The government still hasn't completely abandoned hope that Yoon Sejin might someday return. Instead of permanently confiscating the Sword Palace, they intend to place it under government trusteeship, meaning they will manage and protect the property until its rightful owners return. If that day ever comes, the ownership deed will be handed back without issue. They even plan to let Seong and Seiya continue living there during that time. Reading through the proposal, Seong has to admit it's a surprisingly reasonable compromise. He had originally intended to hand the building over for free anyway, so receiving something in return is an even better outcome. Acknowledging that he understands the government's position, Seong says he's willing to cooperate, but before signing anything, he has one favor he wants to ask. Both Park and Seiya look at him in confusion as he prepares to reveal his condition. Sometime later, another BattleTube livestream begins. The broadcaster, Golden Light Streamer, enthusiastically greets his audience and proudly welcomes everyone to the Blood and Dust Coliseum. Looking down from above the arena, he jokes that the view is much better from up there, before announcing that the famous deep-sea expert has once again arrived. He makes an overly dramatic entrance, drawing an enormous sword and striking a flashy pose that looks far cooler in his own head than it actually does. As soon as the match countdown starts, he immediately begins begging for donations, repeatedly thanking viewers while acting as over-the-top as possible. The audience isn't impressed in the slightest. The chat quickly fills with complaints, with many viewers wondering why he had come back instead of disappearing for good. Even so, everyone knows exactly who he is. Despite his handsome face and endless energy, he's infamous for being an absolute troll. He was once a promising Gold League player, but intentionally demoted himself all the way to bronze just to create content called Deep Sea Exploration, where he entertained himself by bullying weaker players instead of seriously competing. While he jokingly insists he isn't that bad, the chat immediately labels him a complete psychopath. His stats and equipment still belong to the Gold League, making every bronze match little more than a playground for him. With his usual arrogance, Golden announces that the warm-up is over and begins searching for today's first victim. That's when he spots the perfect source of content, Seong Ji-han. The chat instantly recognizes him and starts making jokes as Golden walks straight over for an interview. Completely ignoring Seong's lack of interest, he loudly introduces him as the Sword King's former brother-in-law, the strongest player currently dominating the Bronze League, and the man who recently smashed the twin sword statue, making headlines under countless different nicknames. Seong quickly realizes he's dealing with one of BattleTube's loud, attention-seeking streamers. At the same time, he remembers that he still has several BattleTube achievements he never bothered claiming in his previous life. Since he's already here, he decides he might as well start streaming too. The moment Seong goes live, Golden stands right beside him, continuing to shove the camera into his face while complaining about being ignored. Watching this unfold, the viewers are completely stunned that Seong casually started his own stream right in front of another creator. Golden, on the other hand, immediately becomes irritated. Instead of making content, he's accidentally helping Seong become even more popular. Realizing his own views might start dropping, he decides he needs to eliminate Seong as quickly as possible. Just then, a special mission suddenly appears. A user named Sword King's Love offers 2,000 GP to anyone who kills Seong Jihan and makes sure he finishes in last place. Since 1 GP is roughly equal to $1, Golden is shocked that someone casually offered such a massive reward. He immediately suspects it came from the Sword King's fan club. Then things become even crazier. More and more viewers begin increasing the bounty. The reward climbs higher and higher while Golden watches in disbelief. It quickly reaches 31,978 GP, keeps rising toward 40,000, and he even starts hoping it will hit 50,000 before the match begins. Once all the players are finally summoned into the arena, the total stops at 42,000 GP, leaving Golden slightly disappointed. But just before the game officially starts, another member of the Sword King's fan club promises an additional 10,000 GP if Seong is actually killed. Hearing that, Golden becomes completely fired up. Dramatically thanking his viewers for their burning passion, he secretly celebrates the fact that he just tricked those obsessed fans into funding him. Turning towards Seong, he confidently declares that his game is over before it has even begun. The very next second, Golden activates Charge, a skill that launches him forward at incredible speed and rushes straight towards Seong, convinced the fight is already over. But Seong reacts instantly. Before Golden can even understand what happened, Seong lands a devastating counterattack that knocks the massive sword flying into the air. Frozen in disbelief, Golden can only stare as Seong casually comments that his weapon is sturdier than expected. It turns out the so-called weapon is nothing more than a D-rank cooking set club, and Seong is actually surprised it survived such a direct impact without breaking. Since Golden attacked first, Seong decides it's only fair to return the favor. Coating the simple kitchen utensil with divine power, he charges forward himself. In a single flash, he tears straight through the gold-ranked streamer, cutting him down instantly. Both Golden and his viewers are left completely speechless. The live stream chat immediately explodes with questions. Some viewers wonder whether they're witnessing the Sword King's level of power, while others recognize the white energy as divine power. Many outright refuse to believe someone capable of doing this belongs in the Bronze League. Just like that, Seong secures the match's first elimination, earning 10 achievement points. Looking down at the D-rank kitchen knife, still covered in sacred energy after defeating someone with gold-tier stats, Seong casually thinks that it's been a long time since he last cooked. Judging by what just happened, it looks like he just finished cooking himself a chicken. After dying, the blonde streamer suddenly finds himself drifting through a dark, empty void where every trace of light has disappeared. Still acting dramatic, he starts rambling that the darker the night becomes, the brighter the light will eventually shine. Moments later, he proudly announces his return. The reason is a resurrection cross, a one-time use item that instantly revives its owner after death. Because of how powerful it is, the item is banned from national leagues, promotion series, guild battles, and other major competitions. Thanks to that relic, he comes right back to life and immediately claims he only lost because he let his guard down. Confidently promising the viewers they'll soon watch him cut off Seong Jihan's head, he has no idea that Seong is already standing directly behind him. The moment he notices that familiar smile, all of his confidence disappears. Before he can react, Seong kills him again, securing an effortless double kill. Looking down at the corpse, Seong casually remarks that it's been a long time since he last saw someone use a resurrection cross. In the future, players only bothered with it because of a famous exploit, rather than the death penalty itself. However, something catches his attention that matters far more than the streamer. The arena feels unusually noisy. Looking around, Seong realizes there are powerful spectators watching the match. This time, they're elves. Instantly recognizing them, he coldly refers to them as nasty little pests, remembering that they also played a major role in humanity's destruction. Even so, he decides to worry about them later. Right now, he has more immediate targets. When Seong turns back toward the battlefield, he notices every remaining player running away the instant they spot him. One of them shouts that fighting each other no longer matters because Seong is casually killing players with Gold League strength. Watching everyone scatter only makes hunting players less efficient, but Seong has another priority anyway. After obtaining the D-rank kitchen set relic, he still needs to discover its hidden activation conditions. Just then, the system issues a standard mission, Goblin Subjugation. The objective is to eliminate every goblin gathered around the goblin champion. Calling it a pleasant surprise, Seong immediately rushes toward the monsters. Swinging the club first before finishing them with the knife, he effortlessly cuts through the goblins one after another. As he fights, the system confirms that he's finally using the relic correctly. The kitchen set begins reacting, making Seong realize the relic follows a precise sequence. First, he must crush the target's head, then pierce its heart. Since it's an equipment set rather than a single weapon, every tool has its own proper order. Happy that he figured it out before the match ended, he still can't help wishing he had solved the puzzle earlier. There would have been far more goblins left to test it on. Fortunately, one target still remains. Standing before him is the towering goblin champion, a massive creature, nearly 2 meters tall. Song briefly considers reading its lengthy status description before deciding it isn't worth the time. Instead, he charges straight in, slams the giant's face into the ground with a single blow, casually remarks that being bigger doesn't really matter, then pierces its heart to finish it off. Completing the mission earns him 500 achievement points, another point of divine power, and causes the relic to react once more. After exhausting its stored energy, the kitchen set drops from D rank to E rank. Song quickly realizes that once its energy recovers at the lower rank, he should be able to increase his divine power again by repeating the process. Unfortunately, farming monsters is painfully slow, so with every player already fleeing, he reluctantly decides to resume hunting them instead. If they refuse to come to him, he'll simply chase them down himself. Watching him stalk the battlefield wrapped in sacred energy, even the viewers admit he no longer looks remotely holy. At this point, the only thing surrounding him is pure, murderous intent. Meanwhile, back in Yeoksam, Gangnam, Seoul, the blonde streamer has already respawned in reality and is furiously screaming at his monitor. He angrily complains that Song attacked him out of nowhere, despite him being such a wonderful streamer. At first, he wonders whether Song might simply be weak, before immediately correcting himself. Weak isn't even close. Desperately trying to analyze the fight, he estimates Seong's current stats at 33 strength, 37 agility, 36 vitality, and 34 magic power. Those numbers leave him completely baffled, because the Bronze League's stat cap is only 25. Even after accounting for everything Seong gained during the goblin fight, his average still sits around 35, something that should be completely impossible. The streamer starts convincing himself Seong must be hacking. Then he suddenly hears a strange squealing noise from the livestream. Turning back toward the screen, he realizes it wasn't an animal at all. Seong has begun treating players exactly like he treated the goblins, smashing their heads first before driving the blade through their hearts. Horrified, the streamer can only wonder what kind of massacre the battlefield has turned into. Seong tears through his opponents one after another, securing double kills, triple kills, quadra kills, and finally a pentakill in rapid succession. Some viewers even begin calling the slaughter a work of art, unable to understand how he eliminated 4 players in a single charge. The remaining participants finally realize fighting among themselves is suicide. They immediately begin pooling buffs, equipment, and support abilities together, deciding their only chance is to cooperate against Seong. Others simply start accusing him of hacking and demand that he be removed from the match. Their desperate resistance accomplishes nothing. Song calmly deflects every arrow fired toward him, knocking each projectile off course before continuing the massacre. Another effortless double kill leaves only a handful of survivors alive. The E-rank kitchen set reacts once more, increasing his divine power again before degrading from E-rank to F-rank. At the same time, Seong clears the 1-0 Kill Coliseum mission, earning another 5,000 achievement points. While satisfied with the rewards, he knows they're still nowhere near enough for what he truly wants. Then, the system presents something completely unexpected, an epic mission. The objective is simple in theory, but absurd in practice. Find the Shadow Queen among the Coliseum spectators and provoke her. Seong is genuinely shocked. An epic quest appearing in the Bronze League should be impossible. Even more unbelievable is the reward: interest from the Shadow Queen constellation. Immediately, Seong recalls exactly what that means. Constellations are godlike beings connected to the stars themselves. If even one of them takes an interest in a player, it can eventually lead to sponsorship and grant powers that ordinary players could never hope to obtain. Opportunities like that normally don't exist until someone reaches at least the Diamond League, yet somehow one has appeared before him now. Realizing how valuable this chance is, Seong vows to earn the Shadow Queen's attention no matter what. Once one constellation begins watching him, others are bound to follow. The only problem is actually finding her. Since the Shadow Queen is supposedly hiding somewhere among the countless elves observing the match, all Seong can do for now is carefully study every single face and guess which one might secretly be the legendary constellation. The system officially announces the results of the Coliseum match. With 10-player kills, Seong Jihan finishes in first place, becoming the first Korean player to achieve that feat since Yoon Sejin. News of the accomplishment spreads across forums and social media almost instantly. Thanks to the publicity, Seong's BattleTube channel explodes to 10,000 subscribers, while the livestream peaks at around 4,000 concurrent viewers. Ironically, even the Sword King's fan club ends up helping him grow. Their attempt to ruin Seong only backfires, and before long, all of their anger shifts toward golden light instead. Back in reality, the defeated streamer can only complain that the internet is full of lunatics. Since things have already reached this point, he dramatically announces that he's switching sides and becoming Seong Jihan's biggest supporter. Some viewers even joke that Golden Light has officially promoted himself to Seong Jihan's personal editor, promising to turn him into the greatest BattleTube creator ever. Naturally, nobody bothers asking Song what he thinks about any of that. Back at home, Yoon Se-ah is just as shocked after watching the entire broadcast. She can't understand when her uncle suddenly became this powerful. Online, many viewers are accusing him of smurfing, making it look like an experienced player intentionally entered beginner matches. Song calmly remarks that war has always been ruthless, only for Se-ah to tease him for sounding like an old man. She then explains what smurfing actually means before admitting she honestly hopes that's what's happening, because otherwise his strength would be completely absurd. Looking at his stream settings, she notices he forgot to enable donations. When she asks why, Seong casually admits he simply forgot. Since she's already helping, she suggests adding a minimum donation amount so constant notifications won't distract him during matches. Seong immediately proposes 10,000 GP, making Se-ah stare at him in disbelief. To her, setting the minimum donation at $10,000 is completely insane. While Se-ah worries about stream settings, Seong's attention remains fixed on the epic mission telling him to find the Shadow Queen. No matter how much he thinks about it, he can't imagine identifying one mysterious spectator hidden among an enormous audience. Noticing the troubled look on his face, Se-ah immediately realizes something is bothering him. She smiles and reminds him that whenever he needs help, he can always rely on her. In that moment, Song can't help seeing her mother in her. Deciding to trust her, he finally explains the mission. All he knows is that the Shadow Queen was somewhere among the Colosseum spectators, but he has absolutely no idea who she is. Even Se-ah admits the mission sounds unbelievably strange, but after thinking for a moment, she comes up with an idea. She'll rewatch the battle replay frame by frame in slow motion and search every spectator herself. Seong wishes her luck, though he feels a little guilty about giving her such an impossible task. Finding one hidden person in that massive crowd is practically like searching for a needle in a haystack. Still, he reminds himself that Se-ah was the one who offered to help. Since he finally has some free time, Seong decides to deal with something else he had been postponing. Entering the class space, he uses the extra class slot he previously purchased with achievement points, allowing him to choose a second class. After looking through the available options, he selects Mage. The system confirms the class edition, and Seong immediately feels a completely different kind of energy flowing through his body. Unlike divine power, this new energy originates from his magical power. The real reason he chose Mage instead of another class is because possessing both support and Mage unlocks access to a unique hidden trait. As he summons a glowing purple sphere, he quietly reveals its name Force. That strange power reminds Seong of a conversation from his previous life with Baron Williams. One day, while completely drunk, the world's #1 player had started talking far more honestly than usual. Looking at Seong, Baron repeatedly muttered that everything was such a waste. Curious, Seong asked what he meant. Baron admitted that if Seong had become an American citizen earlier, he would have been recognized as a true American instead of just a useful refugee. Realizing the alcohol had loosened Baron's tongue, Seong listened carefully as the world's strongest player began revealing secrets he had never shared before. Among them was the origin of Force. At first, Seong assumed Force was simply another skill, but Baron corrected him. It wasn't a skill at all. It was a trait born from the perfect fusion of divine power and magic power. Achieving that fusion was incredibly difficult, but nobody had ever seriously attempted it because Baron was believed to be the only player capable of doing so. His unique SS rank gift granted him 2 status windows, allowing him to possess 2 classes simultaneously. When Song asked whether that was the only requirement, Baron casually added one more condition. The player also had to reach level 10. Feeling awkward hearing such confidential information as a foreigner, Seong questioned whether Baron should really be telling him any of this. Baron simply shrugged, saying it didn't matter anymore. Since he was the only player with 2 classes, nobody else could replicate it anyway. At least, that was what Baron believed. Now, thanks to regression and the extra class slot, Song is no longer excluded from that possibility. Determined to obtain Force immediately, Seong begins experimenting. As the unfamiliar energy starts flowing through his body, intense pain strikes him almost instantly. Even so, he refuses to stop. First, he gathers every bit of divine power into his hands before drawing magic power out from his heart and attempting to merge the two together. He desperately tries to stabilize the fusion without allowing either energy to escape. For one brief moment, he thinks he succeeds, then everything explodes. The violent backlash launches him across the room, slamming him into the door as unbearable pain tears through his body. The attempt has failed. Realizing brute force alone won't control 2 completely different energies, Seong wonders if his magical power is simply too low. After only one attempt, most of it is already exhausted. He also questions whether forcing both powers into his hands ever made sense in the first place. Then, another possibility occurs to him. Instead of releasing both energies first, what if he keeps them inside his body? Following that idea, He guides divine power from the upper elixir field and magic power from the middle elixir field, intending to let them clash while avoiding the lower elixir field, where martial power resides. In theory, none of the three energies would be wasted. If all three could eventually coexist, the result would be unimaginable. The moment he tries, agonizing pain tears through every part of his body. The system immediately announces that he is attempting the union of the three elixir fields, something no player should be capable of enduring. Warning after warning appears as the system detects a life-threatening condition. Unknown to Seong, Seiya hears nothing because she's wearing headphones while searching through the replay. Only later does she notice a faint scream coming from his room. Panicked, she rushes over and throws the door open. What she finds leaves her speechless. By then, Seong has somehow stabilized himself. When she asks whether the screams came from a terrible headache, he quietly admits they did. Confused, she demands to know how the pain vanished so suddenly. Seong awkwardly brushes it off as one of the mysteries of the human body, earning an angry response before Seiya immediately apologizes. She wasn't actually mad. She was simply terrified something terrible had happened to him. Only then does Seong realize he never once considered how worried she would become. Genuinely apologizing, he assures her he's fine. Seiya wipes away her tears, lightly punches him in the chest, and says she's just relieved he's safe before returning to her search for the Shadow Queen. Watching her leave, Seong silently promises himself never to let her see him in such a vulnerable state again. Although the three elixir field union clearly failed, Seong quickly realizes it wasn't a complete loss. Picking up a towel, he twists it using nothing but his newly created energy. The experiment proves something incredible. While the full fusion failed, divine power and magic power successfully merged into a brand new unique stat known as strength. Even more surprising, the temporary connection between all three elixir fields never completely disappeared. The system confirms that a faint link still remains active. As a result, martial power and strength now interact with one another, automatically sharing growth. If one stat increases, the other rises alongside it. Curious, Seong immediately raises his martial power to 14, only to watch strength increase at the exact same time. Seeing the interaction work exactly as described, Seong can't help grinning. The mechanic is unbelievably overpowered. If merely linking two of the three powers produces results like this, he can only imagine how monstrous he would become if he ever successfully fused all three elixir fields together. For now, however, he wisely abandons that idea. Attempting it again at his current level would probably kill him. Since he already gained part of what he wanted, he decides to test his new mage abilities instead. Stretching out his hand, he tries casting a simple fire spell, only for the system to inform him that he doesn't have enough magical power yet. Looking down at the tiny flame flickering above his fingers, barely stronger than a cigarette lighter, Seong can only sigh and admit, it's actually kind of cute. The next morning, Seong wakes as the sunlight shines across his face. Opening his status window, he immediately notices that his divine power has reached 10. Along with the increase comes a new restriction from the system. From now on, he can only absorb divine power from C-rank relics or higher, meaning every D-rank and E-rank relic lying around him has officially become useless. He had secretly hoped they would still work, but the system isn't that generous. Grumbling that it's unbelievably stingy, Seong complains that he spent his own hard-earned achievement points buying all those relics, only for them to become obsolete overnight. Since they're no longer useful to him, he decides he might as well sell the second-hand relics on the market and recover some of the investment. After that, he checks on Yoon Seiya, wondering if she's still asleep. Instead, she appears already awake, looking like a complete zombie from exhaustion. Seong immediately asks why she looks so terrible and warns her not to tell him she stayed up all night. Sheepishly, Seiya admits that's exactly what happened. She became so focused on researching that she completely lost track of time until morning arrived. Seong gently tells her she doesn't need to push herself so hard, but she insists the effort was worth it because she actually found something useful. Curious, he asks whether it's information about the different races. Seiya nods, explaining that players with appraisal-type gifts often create analysis videos about other races. That answer makes Seong slightly uneasy. He can't help wondering whether people are really using their rare abilities just to make content. Rather than explaining further, Seiya simply tells him to watch the replay she found. The video shows a dark elf sitting majestically on a throne, while an overly enthusiastic narrator endlessly praises the superiority of elves. Before the commentary can continue, Seong immediately mutes the video, complaining that the narrator's voice is way too creepy. Ignoring that, Seiya points out that both elves shown seem extremely high-ranked. Since one of them is specifically a dark elf, she wonders whether someone with such a queen-like appearance could actually be the mysterious Shadow Queen mentioned in his epic mission. Seong admits the theory makes sense and praises her for making such a good observation. Even so, Seiya remains cautious, saying it's still far too early to jump to conclusions and that she plans to keep searching. Internally, Seong agrees. If finding the Shadow Queen were that easy, a being tied to the constellations would have been discovered long ago. Seiya then says she'll start looking through overseas videos the next day as well. Hearing how seriously she's taking the investigation, Seong jokes that she already sounds like a professional researcher. Smiling proudly, Seiya says she could even edit his BattleTube videos if he wanted, because she already knows video editing. Surprised, Seong asks when she learned something like that. She casually explains that she isn't an expert, but she used to edit her father's videos as a hobby. That innocent answer leaves Seong speechless. The thought of Yoon Sejin immediately resurfaces, and once again he can't understand how someone could abandon a daughter like Seiya after everything she had done for him. In his mind, he quietly curses Sejin for being completely pathetic. His thoughts then drift back to a conversation from 2 days earlier with Section Chief Park Yoon-sik. During that meeting, Park revealed that the administration believed they had finally identified the woman responsible for Yoon Sejin's sudden change. When Seong asked who she was, Park answered with one name: Ito Shizuru. According to the government's investigation, she possesses an S-rank gift known as beauty. The revelation shocked everyone present. Seong immediately wondered whether Sejin had actually fallen in love with Shizuru herself, or whether he had fallen victim to the ability tied to her gift. Park admitted that the administration was beginning to believe it was the latter. As unbelievable as it sounded, it was the only explanation that fit the evidence. He also warned Seong not to underestimate that gift. Beauty supposedly goes far beyond simple charm or mind control. It may even be capable of fundamentally reshaping a person's thoughts and emotions. There had already been several suspicious cases of talented players suddenly abandoning their own countries before relocating to Japan. If beauty truly has no range limitation, then no one can predict when Japan might use it to quietly steal another nation's strongest players. After hearing all of that, Seong searched for information about both Ito Shizuru and the beauty gift, only to find absolutely nothing. He quickly realizes Japan is probably suppressing every piece of information that could expose the truth. Since there isn't any concrete evidence yet, there isn't much he can do for now. Still, he decides to take Park Yoon-sik's warning seriously. If the government's suspicions are correct, then Japan may have already started making its move, and Seong intends to prepare before it's too late. Just as Section Chief Park's warning is still fresh in Seong's mind, a highly suspicious aircraft carrying cargo under the name of Japan's Neo Self-Defense Force lands in South Korea. Around the same time, Yoon Seiya asks her uncle how much longer they'll be, because they'll be late if they don't leave soon. Seong calmly tells her everything is ready, before saying it's time to go and welcome their guests. Together, they head toward the 32nd floor. During the elevator ride, Seong notices Seiya looking nervous and tells her to relax. She quietly admits she's shaking because this is her first major public appearance since everything involving her father happened. Seong reassures her that all they need to do is remain as confident as they were during their previous interview. As long as they don't make any mistakes, they have nothing to fear. Seiya nods and quietly agrees. Once they reach the ground floor, Seong reminds her that most of the people waiting outside have already decided what they want to believe before they even hear anyone speak. Moments later, an official greets them, saying everyone has been waiting and confirming that everything Seong requested has already been prepared. Seong thanks him and confidently says he'll handle the rest himself. While walking inside, Seong speaks with Park Yoon-sik, who admits he was initially confused after receiving Seong's unusual request. Holding an auction for the Sword King's personal collection seemed like a strange decision at first, but now he believes he finally understands the plan. Park asks whether the real purpose is to lure in the Japanese delegation, especially since the Neo Self-Defense Force has its own reserved table at the event. Seong confirms that's exactly the reason. The items selected for the auction weren't chosen randomly. Among them are Yoon Sejin's battle connector and his complete battle records, both of which are perfect bait because Japan would undoubtedly want to obtain every detail of Sejin's combat history. Seong explains that depending on who arrives to purchase those items, they may also reveal far more than they intended. Whether Yoon Sejin personally appears or not, Korea has to accept reality and use this opportunity to move forward instead of endlessly waiting for someone who already left. Listening to him, Park once again realizes how unusually far ahead Seong always thinks. Before they continue, Seong reminds Park that this is their final chance to shape public opinion, and asks him to have the reporters carefully watch the Neo Self-Defense Force's table throughout the auction. Before they can enter the venue, another interruption appears. A woman suddenly calls out, saying she only needs a minute because they're family. Seiya immediately recognizes the couple as her uncle and aunt. Her aunt anxiously asks whether she's really okay with holding this auction. Even if she desperately needs money, does she truly have to sell everything? Then the woman's attention immediately shifts toward Seong. Calling him a scumbag, she accuses him of manipulating Seiya into making these decisions, and angrily demands to know how he dares sell property that doesn't belong to him. Seong instantly takes offense, asking exactly who she's calling a scumbag. Before the argument can escalate further, Seiya steps in herself. She reminds them that she clearly remembers how they once used her father's name to run scams until they were eventually caught. According to her, they've already looked down on her enough. She knows exactly why they came today. They only want to seize what remains of her father's fortune. Her aunt angrily denies the accusation and questions how Seiya could dare speak to her that way. Without hesitating, Seiya calmly states that everything left behind by her father legally belongs to her, and that woman has absolutely no right to interfere. She then orders security to remove them, declaring that they are no longer her family. As security drags the furious couple away, Seiya simply tells her uncle it's time to leave. Watching the entire confrontation, Seong can't help smiling as he tells her she handled everything perfectly. Proudly, Seiya replies that whenever she decides to do something, she always does it properly. Just then, Park informs them that it's time. Together, Seong and Seiya step onto the stage. The instant they appear, cameras begin flashing non-stop as reporters bombard them with questions. They immediately ask why this auction is being held and why foreign countries have been allowed to participate. Others question whether Seiya was pressured into donating the Sword Palace or organizing the auction at all. Some even ask if they've completely given up on the Sword King's return, and what Seiya thinks about people treating his belongings like easy money. Before long, attention shifts towards Seong, with reporters asking for comments about his recent BattleNet victories. Instead of answering, Seong simply raises his hand. Activating his power, he instantly shatters every camera positioned directly in front of him. The reporters panic as shattered equipment crashes to the floor, but Seong completely ignores the chaos. Calmly, he reminds everyone that this is an auction, not a press conference, and orders the room to remain silent. With everyone's attention finally focused on him, Seong begins introducing the 3 auction items. The first consists of Yoon Sejin's battle connector, the complete battle records he used with it, his own personal combat analysis, and additional analysis compiled by many of the strongest players from both South Korea and the East Asia League. The announcement immediately causes an uproar. Information of that level is priceless, especially with tensions between Korea and Japan continuing to rise. Seong points out that analysis from players of this caliber simply cannot be obtained anywhere else. Before he can continue, 2 members of the Japanese delegation stand up. The older man introduces himself as Takeda Kazuo, the recruitment team manager of the Neo Self-Defense Force. Since the auction has officially begun, he immediately makes his first offer 5 billion yen for everything. On top of that, he requests a private meeting with both Seong Jihan and Yoon Sejin. Seong already knows exactly where this conversation is heading. Politely apologizing, he immediately refuses. If Takeda has something to say, he can say it publicly, because there will be no private meeting today. Out of every country present, Japan should understand that better than anyone. Takeda responds with a cold smile, reminding Seong that he's merely a guest and shouldn't be treated so disrespectfully. His smile slowly grows wider as he subtly warns that if Seong continues behaving this way, someone might be forced to intervene. At that exact moment, a young woman silently steps forward and places her sword against Seong's chest. Takeda calmly explains that she's his shadow bodyguard. While she may not be as powerful as the Sword King himself, she's still an outstanding player. Even with a blade pressed against him, Seong doesn't flinch for a second. As Takeda continues speaking with fake politeness, Seong activates sacred power in his eyes and stares directly at the mysterious bodyguard. Looking at her face, he quietly remarks that she resembles Yoon Sejin far more than she should. Instead of calming him down, that resemblance only makes his anger toward his former brother-in-law burn even hotter. In the very next instant, the shadow bodyguard moves. Before her attack can fully unfold, Seong reacts first, driving a devastating punch straight into her chin. Completely overwhelmed, she stumbles backward, instantly realizing she made a fatal mistake. After knocking the shadow bodyguard backward with a single punch, Seong calmly asks whether she still wants to continue. He slowly raises his hand above her head, and for the first time, genuine fear appears on her face. Without even needing to attack again, he quietly tells her to stop because she's already done everything she could. Then he reminds everyone of something important. This entire auction is being broadcast live worldwide through BattleTube. The whole world is watching in real time, so does she really intend to draw her sword in front of millions of viewers? Hearing that, Takeda Kazuo immediately changes his attitude. Acting completely innocent, he insists there was never any intention of allowing violence. According to him, his bodyguard simply acted on her own and went too far, so he politely apologizes on her behalf. Before anyone else can respond, however, Takeda says there's one more important detail to add. His offer of $50 million also includes a private meeting. Then, instead of addressing Seong, he deliberately shifts all attention toward Yoon Seiya. Since she's the Sword King's daughter and rightful heir, Takeda says the decision should belong to her instead. Seong quietly admits that part is technically true. Walking right past Seong, Takeda tells Seiya that she's the real beneficiary of today's auction. The invitation isn't for Seong at all, it's for her. Then he asks the one question designed to shake her resolve. Isn't she curious about how her father is doing? He promises she can ask anything she wants, because there are surely many things only he can answer. Confident that no reasonable person would reject such an opportunity, Takeda waits for her response. To everyone's surprise, Seiya refuses immediately. Even Takeda is visibly caught off guard. He hurriedly asks whether she truly understands what she's rejecting. This is $50 million. Calmly, Seiya admits it's an incredibly tempting offer, just like her uncle said. However, if the only way to hear about her father is by making a deal, then she doesn't want to hear anything at all. She also reminds everyone that she's still a minor, while Seong Jihan is her legal guardian, so she'll follow his decision. Her answer eases the concerns of many people watching, who had worried she might end up being taken to Japan. Even so, others quickly realize they still can't relax. risks. Nothing prevents the Neo Self-Defense Force from simply winning the auction with money alone. Among the audience, one intimidating man, who looks more like an Italian mob boss than an official, is left speechless by Seiya's refusal. Taking advantage of the moment, Takeda calmly announces that the Neo Self-Defense Force will simply purchase everything for $50 million anyway. Confused murmurs spread across the room until he explains that the private meeting was never officially part of the auction. It was merely a personal bonus, he added himself. The real offer was always $50 million. Realizing he had been manipulated from the very beginning, Song's anger immediately flares up. Takeda casually reveals that Yoon Se-jin himself ordered him to bring those $50 million. To prove it, he presents the payment card before also producing a personal letter addressed to Yoon Se-ah from the Sword King. In his eyes, the auction is already finished. The moment Seiya looks at the envelope, she notices something that stings even more than the money. Her father's signature no longer reads Yoon Se-jin. It now bears his new name, Ito Ryuhei. Takeda quietly comments on how surprisingly easy it was to obtain all of the Sword King's belongings, even wondering aloud whether anyone on Baron Williams's Korean side could have matched an offer that large. Everyone listening silently curses him in their heads as he casually remarks that the auction ended much faster than expected. Although Seong is furious, Takeda continues speaking. Before returning to Japan, he mentions that the United States government once banned the head of Japan's new defense recruitment division from entering the country because he was simply too successful at recruiting talented foreign players. Eventually, people began calling him the Japanese calamity. He then politely asks Seong to sign the necessary paperwork as soon as possible. While agreeing for the moment, Song silently notes that there's a real possibility Takeda is connected to Ito Shizuru, making him someone who deserves very careful attention. Meanwhile, the atmosphere throughout the venue turns increasingly uncomfortable. The auction ended so quickly that many spectators begin questioning whether the entire event was staged from the beginning. If Japan was always going to pay $50 million immediately, then why invite every other country at all? Realizing public opinion is starting to turn against them, Seong knows they desperately need something to shift the narrative. Before he can think of a solution, Sia opens her father's letter. Reading it aloud, she reveals its contents. Sejin says he heard about her decision to donate the Sword Palace, calling it a terrible choice without even asking for her reasons. He explains that this money will be the last inheritance he ever gives her and hopes she spends it wisely because, from this point forward, their relationship as father and daughter is officially over. She should never expect anything else from him again. After finishing the letter, Seiya quietly confirms that it's undeniably her father's handwriting. Listening to every word, Seong's rage only grows stronger. Remembering everything Section Chief Park told him about beauty, he begins wondering whether the gift truly goes beyond ordinary mind control. Maybe it doesn't simply manipulate people, it completely rewrites who they are. In the past, Sejin had genuinely been a caring and dependable father to Seiya. Watching him now personally drive the final nail into their relationship feels absolutely unforgivable. Remaining calm, Seiya asks Takeda to deliver one final message back to Ito Ryuhei. She says she received his last inheritance without any problems and is more than happy to cut all remaining ties with him. She also remarks that tearing up the letter would only create extra work for the cleaning staff. Before she can do anything else, Seong quietly tells her not to worry. Using his power, he pulls the letter directly into his own hand before igniting it with fire until nothing remains but ashes. Everyone watching is completely stunned. Moments ago, they believed Song was a support-type player, yet now they're watching him manipulate divine power, fight like a warrior, and casually use magic as well. Even Takeda can't hide his interest anymore. Staring directly at Seong, he quietly decides that Japan absolutely has to recruit this man somehow. The moment the event begins settling down, representatives from various organizations immediately rush towards Song, asking whether he's already joined a guild and promising to offer whatever he wants if he'll simply consider them. Seong raises his hand, telling everyone to calm down because having the entire crowd charge him at once is becoming a problem. Just then, Seiya quietly walks over to him. Thinking she's tired, Seong apologizes and asks if she can head home first while he deals with everyone here. Instead, she suddenly says something feels wrong. Her head begins hurting, the pain rapidly worsens, and she suddenly collapses right in front of him. Completely panicked, Seong immediately catches her before she can hit the ground, desperately calling her name and begging her to wake up. After a tense moment, Seiya slowly opens her eyes. Song frantically asks whether she's alright, and tells her they'll take her straight to the hospital. Instead, she quietly admits she was only pretending. She noticed how trapped he was by the crowd and decided to fake collapsing so everyone would back off. Looking at him with a mischievous smile, she asks whether she did a good job. Relieved beyond words, Song laughs and tells her she's just like her mother, quickly correcting himself after accidentally saying sister instead. With that, he announces that today's event is officially over because his niece isn't feeling well and needs to rest. Asking whether she can still walk, Seiya says all she wants to do is go home and sleep. Just before they leave, Takeda Kazuo calls out to Seong one final time, politely apologizing if his presence caused any inconvenience. He says he'd like to invite Seong to a formal meeting so they can become better acquainted, then hands over his business card. Without saying a word, Seong uses his power to pull the card into his hand. Looking directly at Takeda, He quietly calls the invitation a joke. Then he tears the card cleanly in half before letting the shredded pieces fall right in front of the Japanese recruiter. That silent act of destruction is his entire answer. Everyone watching is left speechless. The elite recruiter, representing one of the world's most influential organizations, had just been publicly rejected by a Bronze League player from Korea. Meanwhile, Takeda is strangely thrilled by everything that just happened. Instead of feeling insulted, he thinks the protagonist is even more incredible now. He even calls Seong's ability an unknown power capable of destroying a business card from that far away. To him, that ability alone makes Seong unbelievably valuable. The more he thinks about it, the more convinced he becomes that Seong is no ordinary bronze player. He's a rising star with limitless potential, and Takeda wants to recruit him more than ever, no matter what it takes. At the same time, Seong and Seiya are feeling pretty satisfied with how they handled the situation. Seiya proudly says she acted perfectly because Takeda fell for her performance immediately. When she playfully asks whether he's ever seen her do anything wrong, Seong immediately brings up her cooking. That completely shuts her down. Right then, Seong notices an unread system message. Opening it, he sees that someone named Stalker Chan donated 10,000 GP, writing that it was nice meeting him. He's shocked the donation came through even while his stream was offline. What bothers Seiya even more is how creepy the message sounds. Seong can only wonder why his very first donation had to come from someone like that before deciding he'll just block him. Just then, Lee Haeyeon walks over with Lim Gaeyong, calling out to both Seong and Seiya. The two groups stare at each other for a moment in slight confusion, before Haeyeon politely introduces herself as the director of the 3rd PR division of the Twin Stars Guild. She apologizes for suddenly approaching them and explains that she really wanted to meet them in person. Seong immediately realizes something is off, because normal people shouldn't even be able to get inside this area. Asking how she managed it, he also notices her voice sounds strangely familiar. Haeyeon casually explains that she has good connections within the Korean BattleNet administration, and simply used those relationships to get in. She even proudly says she's famous in the guild for knowing everybody. Hearing that confidence and her voice together suddenly stirs an old memory. When she casually brings up his old match predictions, everything finally clicks. Seong realizes she's someone he knew in his previous life, the woman who once told him she'd always been one of his biggest fans. Seeing him stare in surprise, Seiya asks what's wrong, while Haeyeon jokingly wonders whether her beauty broke his brain. Instead of answering directly, Seong quotes Dostoevsky, saying that when the world is full of possibilities, it's hard to give them up, adding that the famous novelist was also addicted to gambling. The quote catches both girls completely off guard. Before anyone can respond, Lim Gaeyong immediately steps in front of Haeyeon and demands to know how Seong knows Haeyeon's personal motto. Only a handful of people know about her gambling problem, so how could a complete stranger possibly know that quote? At that moment, Seong becomes certain of her identity. He remembers her as Zero, the first Korean manager in the American Guild. Despite struggling with alcohol and gambling, her voice gift eventually evolved far beyond simply increasing experience. After the tutorial, it became capable of boosting stats, gifts, and almost everything else, allowing her to become the reserve team's guild master. Remembering all that, Seong casually asks whether she's still visiting casinos. The question instantly hits a nerve. Haeyeon awkwardly tells Lim Gaeyong to stop him before he keeps talking. Looking at both Zero and the Plum Blossom Sword, Seong quietly thinks the Twin Stars Guild really gathered some impressive talent. He then explains that he only recognized her because he met her through one of his earliest live streams, and one of her comments had stayed in his memory ever since. He apologizes if he startled her because he only wanted to confirm his suspicion. Hearing that, Lim Gaeyong immediately asks if Haeyeon was seriously chatting in livestream comments. Haeyeon's face turns bright red as she desperately tells her to shut up. Trying to recover her dignity, she complains that being remembered as a gambling addict isn't exactly flattering. Seong immediately corrects her, bluntly pointing out she isn't just remembered as one, she actually is one. Standing beside him, Seiya notices something she hasn't seen in a long time. Her uncle actually smiled. Watching the interaction, she immediately starts wondering if he likes Haeyeon. Trying to regain control of the conversation, Haeyeon says that starting things off in a relaxed atmosphere isn't bad, and, strangely enough, it feels like they've already met countless times before. Standing nearby, Seiya secretly gets excited and quietly grabs her phone, becoming completely convinced this woman likes her uncle. Finally getting to the real topic, Haeyeon brings up the Twin Stars Guild and asks if Seong would be willing to meet somewhere later to discuss recruitment. Seiya's imagination immediately goes wild, making her wonder if this is what gaining an aunt feels like. Meanwhile, Haeyeon confidently congratulates herself internally, convinced she looked incredibly charming just now, even telling Lim Gaeyong to pay attention and learn how someone with experience handles men. Lim Gaeyong couldn't care less. Just as Haeyeon expects everything to go smoothly, Seong apologizes and says he doesn't remember his phone number. Both women freeze on the spot. He even turns towards Seiya and asks whether she remembers it. Watching the scene unfold, Seiya can only think that's the worst excuse she's ever heard. At first, she assumes he's deliberately playing hard to get, but then she realizes he's completely serious. He genuinely can't remember his own Korean phone number. Deciding to help him escape the awkward situation, she suddenly pretends to feel dizzy again. Unfortunately, their teamwork completely falls apart because Seong misunderstands everything and honestly thinks she needs to go home and rest. Telling everyone his niece still isn't feeling well, he says they'll leave first. Before walking away, he asks Haeyeon to simply give him her business card instead, promising he'll contact her later. Still too stunned to react, she silently hands it over. As Song and Seo leave together, Seo happily thinks she doesn't have to worry about her uncle's love life anymore, while Song remains completely clueless about what just happened. The moment they're gone, Lim Gae-yong can no longer hold it in and bursts into laughter. Haeyeon tells her to just laugh if she's going to laugh anyway, and Lim immediately starts teasing her non-stop while Haeyeon complains that Seong is unbelievably clueless. Later, while walking home, Seo suddenly asks her uncle whether he even knows what being unexpected means. She says she never imagined he'd use something her father used to do. Completely misunderstanding her, Seong comments that she's getting older, her clothes are getting shorter, and that they still look good on her. Seo quickly tells him that's not what she meant. She was talking about the rejection line he used earlier. Who still uses the excuse of forgetting their own phone number? Replaying the entire conversation in her head, she says acting hard to get was one thing, but pretending not to know his own number was just sad. She proudly claims the only reason everything worked out was because she stepped in to save him. Seong insists once again that he honestly doesn't remember his Korean number. This time, she isn't sure whether to believe him anymore, so she seriously asks if he's telling the truth. When he calmly answers yes, the atmosphere instantly becomes awkward. Slowly lowering her hand, she jokingly says he's starting to show signs of Alzheimer's, while Seong can only sigh to himself, thinking that's definitely not what's happening. After that painfully awkward encounter, Seong returns to Bronze League Gangnam for another match. This time, the mission is defense. The objective is simple: protect the crystal while surviving waves of zombies. Even before the battle begins, Seong admits he's exhausted. Between everything that happened at the auction and trying to calm Seo, he's completely worn out. Unfortunately, Seo suddenly breaks down crying, blaming herself for ruining her uncle's future love life. Through tears, she says she messed everything up and calls herself an idiot. Seong can only ask if she seriously believed he liked Lee Haeyeon. Why would he suddenly fall for someone addicted to gambling? Even so, meeting Zero again was something he never expected, and the thought pulls him back to memories from his previous life. Back then, after both of them had quickly lost their home countries, Seong and Zero naturally became friends. During their free time, the two constantly drank together and wasted money gambling. Zero, in particular, was completely addicted to betting. One day, while the two of them were drinking and watching a match, she started yelling at Seong, asking how someone as useless as Jihan could possibly win. Seong calmly reminded her that he had already predicted Diego Massid would win. Furious after losing another bet, Zero complained that an ancient gift called the God of Football had no business being that overpowered. Seong simply told her to stop paying attention to the ridiculous name and look at its rank. Instead, it was SS rank. Zero stubbornly insisted she'd win the next bet, prompting Seong to tell her to stop gambling altogether. She immediately cut him off with her favorite quote: "When the world is full of possibilities, it's hard to let any of them go." Then she got annoyed, because Seong always repeated that line whenever she lost. Curious, he once asked if she ever planned on removing the mask she always wore. She refused, saying that, just like Seong once told her, it was the price she paid for making a deal with the devil. Looking back now, Seong realizes becoming naturalized wasn't the only thing they had in common. Later, Zero quietly asked why Seong had become so unbelievably strong. She admitted that if he had possessed that strength while Korea still existed, maybe his friend wouldn't have died. She stopped herself there because she carried the same guilt. To Seong, that was what truly connected them. Both of them were crushed by regret, hatred, and the pain of failing to protect the people they cared about most. In the end, they both wore the exact same bitter expression. That was the relationship they shared in his previous life. Meanwhile, back in the present, Seong's live stream chat suddenly explodes with activity. A gigantic sword appears in his hands, immediately making one viewer joke that the weapon is so massive it looks like it's about to stab through the screen. The weapon is the Execution Greatsword of Priest Urk, a C-rank relic. Seong admits he wondered why a C-rank relic was being sold so cheaply, but now he understands the reason. The sword is simply too enormous and too heavy for an ordinary player to wield. For him, however, it's perfect. He casually begins swinging the massive blade around as though it weighs nothing. Watching the broadcast, viewers can't believe someone who supposedly chose support and mage is handling a weapon like that so effortlessly. Many immediately start claiming his strength has to be at least Gold League level before flooding the chat with requests for a status reveal. Looking at the non-stop messages, Seong wonders if he should finally show his status window. Instead, he slams the greatsword into the ground and comments that more and more people keep showing up asking for things. Since his channel has already reached roughly 12,000 subscribers, he admits he probably can't keep avoiding the topic forever. Finally introducing himself properly as Song Jihan, he tells everyone he'll reveal his status window once the channel reaches 200,000 subscribers. The viewers immediately complain because that goal feels impossibly far away. Smirking, Seong adds another condition: if he loses even a single match before then, he'll he'll reveal his status immediately. Satisfied with that compromise, he quietly thinks his viewers really aren't that hard to deal with. Just then, the rest of his teammates begin spawning into the match. As Seong picks up the giant sword, he immediately freezes in confusion. Out of all the possible teammates, the system somehow matched him with the exact same mage he killed multiple times before, the overly enthusiastic, blonde streamer who now practically worships him, and one more player he never expected to see. The last man casually stands there juggling a soccer ball. Seong can't help wondering what someone like that is even supposed to do in a zombie defense mission. Kick soccer balls at the undead? The blonde streamer is absolutely thrilled, happily declaring that fate has brought him together with Seong Jihan once again. Meanwhile, the unlucky mage looks terrified after realizing he's been placed on Seong's team for a second time. His attention, however, quickly shifts to the final teammate. The man juggling the ball is none other than Diego Macide. Before the regression, Diego was Argentina's #1 player. Even so, Seong remembers him as someone who never seemed particularly special back then. He has a solid build, though his rough beard doesn't exactly improve his appearance. Still, something feels completely wrong. If Seong himself is the support, the blonde streamer is listed as the warrior, and the frightened player is still the mage, then Diego's class doesn't make any sense. Before the regression, Diego had definitely been a mage. Realizing that detail no longer matches the future, he remembers, Seong can only wonder, what the hell is going on? The mage can't believe he's been matched with Seong Jihan again. Just seeing him brings back the memory of losing one of his precious skills because of Seong, and he's still furious enough that he doesn't even want to look at him. At the same time, an access request suddenly appears from the Sword King's fan club. Confused, he wonders why something like that popped up and what kind of weirdo would send it. Curious, he opens it and immediately understands what's happening. A special mission appears. Destroy the crystal and stop Seong Jihan from finishing in first place. The reward is already 50,000 GP, meaning someone desperately wants Seong to lose. Just then, the match officially begins. Diego Macide immediately kicks his soccer ball straight into a zombie's face. Somehow, the ball deals real damage, nearly knocking the monster over before bouncing right back. Diego effortlessly traps it on his chest and turns towards Seong, asking for a buff because he needs more power. Saying teamwork only works if everyone does their part, he waits while Seong wonders whether his support skills will finally work properly. In the past, his weak stats prevented him from using buffs effectively, but now both his divine power and strength have increased. Deciding to test it, he casts Energize on the entire team. The buff successfully reaches all 3 teammates. The blonde streamer immediately lights up, amazed that Seong really is a support after all. Even the mage can't believe the same guy he hates just buffed him. Seong then calmly asks whether he's finally planning to fight properly this time. The mage immediately agrees, knowing full well that refusing would probably get him killed again. Curious, the blonde asks if something happened between the two of them, wondering whether they're actually friends. The mage internally thinks the exact opposite, but wisely decides to keep quiet. Seong simply tells the 3 of them to defend the upper level while he heads down alone. All of them stare at him in disbelief. Diego wonders if he's insane, while the mage bluntly answers that it's obvious. Complaining that he isn't Seong's subordinate, he almost argues before deciding it's better to just leave him alone. Instead, he plans to watch how long Seong can keep showing off, especially since the bounty to ruin him has already climbed to 51,800 GP. Without another word, Seong jumps directly into the middle of the zombie horde. Still falling through the air, he unleashes fire magic, blasting blue flames into the crowd before even touching the ground. Since his magic power merged into force, and divine power can now be mixed into it, the flames have become far deadlier than before. To him, the zombies are nothing more than rag dolls waiting to be burned away. The explosion tears through the horde, and before the smoke even settles, Seong grips the execution greatsword of Priest Urk with both hands and crashes into the ground. The massive blade slams down with incredible force, releasing a shockwave that launches zombies in every direction. Watching from above, Diego can't help admitting that this Korean bronze support is ridiculously powerful. The blonde excitedly asks whether the viewers are seeing all of this, because the entire battle is being streamed live. As fresh waves of zombies continue charging in, Seong calmly studies the battlefield while the chat keeps asking where this absolute monster came from. Suddenly, a red zombie sprints toward him before freezing in place without warning. Seeing that, Seong smiles. Just as he expected, earning this power was difficult, but completely worth it. Every zombie around him suddenly stops moving. This is the true value of force space control, or absolute dominion. Inside the area he controls, nobody can move freely. Every action is restricted, turning every zombie within range into an effortless target. While most players would struggle to understand such overwhelming control, Seong is already used to it. During his previous life, he sparred countless times with Baron Williams, whose raw strength far exceeded his own control. control over force. Fighting Baron repeatedly allowed Seong to understand exactly how the ability worked. Pulling the great sword from the ground, he coats the blade in holy fire. His goal isn't simply to become stronger, he's aiming to become an absolute existence capable of wielding divine power, magic, and martial strength together. Against Bronze League monsters, nothing here can stop him. A single swing tears through the zombie pack, instantly cutting down dozens at once. His personal kill count jumps to 124, and seeing that number reminds him of the mission he failed to complete before. This time, he'll personally kill 1,000 zombies by himself and claim the 3,000 achievement point reward. Determined not to waste another second, Seong accelerates. His speed keeps increasing until he becomes little more than a blur tearing across the battlefield. Zombies fall one after another, while everyone watching from above can only stare in disbelief. Even Diego is genuinely impressed, and the viewers begin saying there's no way Seong will lose first place now. The blonde streamer, meanwhile, becomes even more desperate to see Seong's hidden status window. That conversation gives the mage an idea. A nasty grin slowly spreads across his face as he decides to cause trouble instead. The blonde notices him acting strangely, and casually points out that everyone is watching him now. Ignoring the warning, the mage quietly begins gathering fire magic beside the crystal, leaving both the viewers and his teammates wondering what exactly he's doing. Then he suddenly shouts towards Seong, hurling insults across the battlefield. Even from deep within the zombie horde, Seong hears every single word. The mage mocks him for becoming the center of attention, and sarcastically says he's even managed to charm his own niece. Then he crosses a line he should never have touched. He loudly asks when Seong supposedly manipulated Sia enough to make her obsess over him, even suggesting Seong was controlling her mind to force her obedience. Surrounded by zombies, Seong suddenly stops moving. He doesn't answer. Instead, something inside him quietly changes. The system reveals that Kim Gyu-hyuk has already earned 55,000 GP from viewers supporting his mission against Seong. That massive reward has given the idiot far more confidence than he deserves, so he continues screaming insults without realizing what he's done. Listening quietly, Seong concludes there are only two possible explanations. Either someone deliberately encouraged him, or the reward simply made him reckless. Either way, Kim Gyu-hyuk is nothing more than a nuisance trying to provoke him before running away behind his growing popularity. Normally, Seong wouldn't care about simple trash talk, but this time, Kim wasn't insulting him, he was insulting Seiya. Ever since returning to the past and seeing Seiya alive again, Seong hasn't been able to erase the memories of his previous life. The one memory he can never forget is holding her dying body in his arms after the Sword King's fan club carried out its terrorist attack. Her face had been wrapped in bandages, her body was growing cold, and no matter how desperately he begged her to wake up, he couldn't save her. That helpless feeling still haunts him. He already swore that this time no one would ever hurt Seiya again. Anyone who dared target her would pay the price. Everyone watching can instantly tell something about Seong has changed. After attempting to fuse the 3 elixir fields, he discovered something unexpected. Although his martial power still hasn't reached 30, he can now briefly imitate the nameless divine art. During the failed fusion, he experienced the exact same sensation he once felt while using that legendary technique. The moment the memory resurfaces, golden light fills his eyes. Entering that state, Seong immediately channels lightning into his legs. Thunder erupts around him, instantly burning away every zombie nearby. Then he realizes something incredible. If he becomes lightning itself, he can return to the top of the tower in less than a second. Activating lightning steps, Seong shoots through the air like a bolt of lightning. Meanwhile, the idiot standing on top of the tower still thinks provoking Seong was a brilliant idea. Seeing where this is heading, the blonde streamer quickly tells him to stop. Instead of listening, the mage immediately throws a fireball at him and warns him not to interfere unless he wants to burn before anyone else. The blonde turns to the viewers and tells everyone that if they want Seong Jihan to stay safe, they should support him. The mage ignores him completely. His expression turns serious as 3 magic circles appear around him. Gathering far more mana than before, he forms a massive fireball and sarcastically says goodbye to the crystal before launching it straight toward the objective. Just before it lands, Diego Macide kicks his own glowing sphere forward. The soccer ball collides with the fireball and completely cancels it out, protecting the crystal. The ball flies back, scorched, but the defense holds. The mage spins around in disbelief, unable to understand what just happened. Diego simply stares back with a cold expression. When the mage demands an explanation, Diego calmly says he always follows the rules of every match he plays, and he won't let someone ruin one. More importantly, the mage insulted the person carrying the entire team, and even dragged his family into it. That's something Diego refuses to tolerate. Furious, the mage starts screaming curses at him, but before he can continue, Seong suddenly appears directly behind him. The mage doesn't even realize how he got there, while the blonde freezes in complete shock. Looking over his shoulder, the mage finds Seong standing right behind him. Seong calmly says that if he wanted to talk so badly, then they could talk face to face. The moment Death is standing behind him, the mage starts trembling. He can't understand how Seong crossed the battlefield so quickly. Trying to say something, he barely manages to open his mouth before Seong instantly silences him by pinching it shut with force, using only 2 fingers. The mage struggles to speak, but Seong tells him that at first he planned to kill him immediately. Then he changed his mind. Letting him die would be too merciful. Since BattleNet connectors reduce pain and death would only cost him a level, Seong decides he'll teach him what this new world is really like instead. Resting one hand on the mage's shoulder, he calmly reminds him that dying quickly isn't going to happen. The mage desperately convinces himself that he has already lost all his skills anyway. Sure, losing rewards hurts, but at least he succeeded in making Seong angry. Maybe that alone made everything worthwhile. The very next second, unbearable pain explodes throughout his body. His entire body convulses as he wonders what the hell is happening. The pain is unlike anything he's ever experienced. Watching him coldly, Seong asks if he's already screaming. They haven't even started yet. The mage immediately begins howling, begging Seong to stop and pleading for mercy loud enough for everyone watching to hear. Some viewers begin calling Seong far too cruel, while others start agreeing. Then someone notices something strange. BattleNet connectors are supposed to reduce pain, so why is the mage suffering this much? Another viewer realizes Seong is secretly casting healing with his free hand. That makes everything click. Someone explains it's a connector bug. If continuous damage like burning or poison is constantly healed at the same time, the connector overloads and starts letting the pain pass through instead of suppressing it. The mage feels every bit of agony in full force, making him scream even louder. The blonde can only watch in horror, unable to imagine what Seong is actually doing. Inside his own mind, Seong calmly recognizes the technique he's using. It's called displacement, a martial art mastered by only a handful of people. By sending energy directly into an opponent's body, it twists muscles, shatters bones, and destroys the target from the inside before the healing immediately repairs the damage, forcing them to experience the pain again and again. Even with a top-tier BattleNet connector that blocks 95% of pain, the mage feels like his organs are being ripped apart while countless needles stab through every inch of his body. Eventually, he stops begging for mercy and instead begs Seong to simply kill him already, cursing him through the tears. Seong quietly grants that request, cutting off his head with a single slash. As the mage dies, he wonders whether he'll finally respawn somewhere safe. The blonde wisely decides not to even approach Seong anymore after witnessing what happened, silently realizing just how terrifying this man truly is. But the nightmare isn't over. The mage respawns and immediately starts screaming again. One older viewer even jokes that this feels like deja vu. The mage desperately begs anyone to save him. At this point, everyone watching reaches the same conclusion. Seong Ji-han is absolutely terrifying. The mage dies once more, this time from nothing but overwhelming fear and shock. Seong quietly wonders whether he really couldn't endure it before deciding he probably needs to control his own strength better. When the mage respawns again, he instantly falls to his knees, begging Seong not to come near him and pleading for everything to stop. Seong coldly replies that if he wasn't prepared to face the consequences, he never should have started this in the first place. Just then, Seiya suddenly donates 10,000 GP through the livestream. She begs her uncle to stop, saying he's already gone far enough. If he keeps this up, he'll lose all his viewers. The chat is flooded with comments from traumatized viewers saying this is way too much. They only wanted to watch him do something cool, not witness psychological torture. Seiya tells him to calm down and focus on clearing the game instead. Surprisingly, Seong is calmer than everyone expected, though even he still feels the punishment isn't enough. Even so, he decides to stop there. Compared to the brutal future he remembers, these are still peaceful times, and this lesson should be enough. While the mage continues begging for someone to kill him, Seong ignores the pleas because there's still one thing he wants to know. Looking straight into the mage's eyes, he asks who convinced him to do all this. That single stare almost scares the mage to death again. Without hesitating, he blurts everything out. A member called Sword King FC 898 offered him 50,000 GP to sabotage Seong. Completely broken now, the mage repeatedly apologizes, saying he lost his mind after the Sword King's fan club kept showering him with donations until he got carried away. He insists he deserves to die and begs Seong to forgive him. Even after hearing the confession, Seong feels something doesn't add up. Offering 50,000 GP isn't something a single random person normally does, so this is probably bigger than just one fan. Quietly making a mental note, Seong grabs the mage by the collar one last time and tells him to thank Seiya instead, because she's the reason this finally stopped. The mage immediately thanks Seiya over and over before Seong tosses him straight back into the zombie horde. Watching the whole thing unfold, the blonde streamer casually turns back toward his audience and cheerfully says that this is exactly how things work on this channel. If everyone enjoyed the show, they should remember to like and subscribe. With that distraction finally over, Seong decides it's time to get back to hunting zombies. He figures he would have cleared the mission long ago if the mage hadn't wasted his time. Before leaving, he had already reached 921 zombie kills, slicing through the undead without much effort. Confident the last 80 kills will only take a moment, he opens his status window, only to freeze after noticing an unread notification. Somehow, The mission is already complete. Confused, he looks behind him and spots a massive trail of scorched earth stretching across the battlefield, with countless burned zombies scattered everywhere. That's when it clicks. The lightning released during his lightning step had wiped them out. When he launched himself through the air, he failed to fully control the electricity produced by the technique, allowing the leftover energy to explode outward and incinerate everything nearby. Seong quietly admits the result wasn't clean. Instead of using the true nameless divine art, he relied on the unstable fusion of the 3 elixir fields. The power was effective, but still rough around the edges. He knows he'll need much more practice. Just then, the blonde streamer excitedly asks whether Seong is heading back down and if he can tag along. Instead of answering, Seong turns toward Diego. Masid first and sincerely thanks him for protecting the crystal. Diego simply says he only did what anyone should have done. The atmosphere between them immediately becomes friendlier, and Seong promises he'll repay the favor later. He even says there's something important he wants to discuss with Diego. Before he can explain, however, the entire battlefield suddenly begins shaking violently. Everyone immediately panics. Nothing like this has ever happened during a Bronze League match. The blonde nervously says it feels like something is about to burst out of the ground, while Diego quietly tells him to look ahead. A second later, the earth tears open and an enormous finger erupts from below. As more of it surfaces, everyone realizes they're staring at a gigantic hand with a grotesque mouth growing from its palm. The monster lets out an eerie scream directly at Seong. Nobody can even identify what they're looking at. The blonde simply calls it disgusting, while pointing out how unbelievably huge it is from up close. Then, without warning, the giant hand begins grabbing nearby zombies and stuffing them into its mouth. Seong instantly recognizes what's happening. The creature is devouring them. One after another, the zombies are crushed, eaten, and chewed into disgusting chunks. After swallowing enough corpses, a lump of flesh remains on its tongue before dropping onto the battlefield. Moments later, that lump twists into a brand new monster. The blonde stares in disbelief. That's a flesh golem, a creature that should never appear in a Bronze League match. Even he knows monsters like this normally belong in Gold League content. Alarmed, Seong realizes something is seriously wrong. This doesn't make any sense unless it's connected to the chain quest. Quickly opening his status window, he reads the new objective: defeat the flesh golem without using the crystal's blessing. That final condition immediately catches his attention. At the same time, the system announces that defense map, the 10 towers, has officially been cleared, making the entire situation even stranger. Then another notification appears. Bonus mission unlocked. Eliminate the flesh golem. Everyone is stunned. Bronze maps were never supposed to contain bonus missions, let alone ones involving monsters like this. According to the system, they must eliminate the flesh golem created by the Apostle of Destruction, Black Hand. As the golem begins advancing, the giant hand slowly sinks back beneath the earth, as if its job is already finished. Song calmly explains that the crystal's blessing normally helps bridge the power gap against enemies like this, making the blonde wonder whether this mission is even designed to be beaten. Even Gold League players struggle against flesh golems. Seong agrees. It definitely doesn't look like a normal mission, but if it weren't nearly impossible, the rewards wouldn't be this ridiculous. Clearing it grants 10,000 achievement points and a crystal fragment. The fragment immediately catches Seong's attention. Rewards like that belong on at least an epic mission, making it obvious that's the true prize. While the blonde continues urging him to receive the crystal's blessing before fighting, Seong simply draws the execution greatsword of Priest Lightning immediately begins gathering around the blade as he calmly says he doesn't need the blessing. Locking onto the flesh golem, he begins advancing. He explains that flesh golems are naturally undead, making them incredibly durable. The only way to kill one is by destroying the core hidden deep inside its body. Unfortunately, the constantly shifting flesh and tangled corpses surrounding that core make it extremely difficult to hit. Even Gold League players treat them as dangerous mid-level bosses. No matter how strong Seong is for a bronze player, this fight is still incredibly risky. As lightning surges around him, he quietly tells Diego and the others to step back. None of them have any idea what he's about to do. Then Seong explodes forward. His lightning step strikes the ground with such force that it leaves a deep crater beneath his feet. Watching that terrifying acceleration, the others finally understand just how absurd he really is. While soaring toward the flesh golem, Seong recalls one of the most fundamental techniques within the nameless divine arts, the foundation, built upon its 3 basic forms. Heaven represents a vertical slash, earth represents a horizontal slash, and man represents a thrust. Those 3 movements form the core of the entire martial art. Raising his sword high, Seong transitions into another technique that symbolizes the destruction of mountains. One overwhelming vertical slash cleaves the flesh golem clean in half, splitting its body apart while striking its hidden core dead center. Diego is so stunned that he actually drops what he's holding. Neither he nor the blonde can believe Seong destroyed the core in a single attack. Seong casually comments that, despite its grand name, the technique is really nothing more than a vertical slash. Even so, what he just accomplished is anything but ordinary. The system immediately announces that Seong has defeated the flesh golem, making the 4th tower the first to clear the bonus mission. Everyone watching is left speechless. For the blonde streamer, Something changes completely in that moment. Fear, admiration, hope, despair, and excitement all hit him at once. He actually drops to one knee out of pure respect, overwhelmed by what he just witnessed. At first, Seong had simply been entertaining livestream content. Now, he looks like someone destined to stand at the very top of all players. The blonde immediately decides he'll record Seong's journey from beginning to end and capture the birth of a true legend. Moments later, Seong returns to the tower in another flash of lightning. Even if the blonde is completely serious about supporting him now, winning Seong over won't be easy. More importantly, this battle becomes the true beginning of Seong Jihan's relationship with Diego Maceed, setting the foundation for what could become a powerful alliance in the future. Meanwhile, the situation at the other towers is far less fortunate. Players desperately curse the game as flesh golems overwhelm their defenses one after another. Entire towers are destroyed, including the third tower, while several others fall shortly afterward. Eventually, the bonus mission comes to an end, and everyone who successfully cleared it receives triple XP and triple GP. Looking over his rewards, Seong quietly admits this match paid incredibly well. Still, there's one final thing he wants before leaving. Turning toward Diego, he says they can meet outside later. Diego politely refuses any reward, saying Seong already earned him more than enough through the bonus mission. Instead, Diego wants to ask about the strange comment Seong made earlier regarding his abilities. Curious, he asks what exactly Seong meant. Seong only gives him one word, mage. He says explaining everything here would spoil the surprise, so they'd be better off discussing it over dinner. Diego immediately realizes Seong is hinting that he should change classes. Under normal circumstances, he'd reject an idea like that instantly. But after witnessing everything Seong just accomplished, he can't help becoming interested. If there's truly another class that suits him better, Diego tells Seong to contact him later. Seong likes that answer and casually asks what kind of food he prefers so they can choose a restaurant. Before they can finish, the blonde streamer eagerly jumps in, asking if he can join them too. Diego immediately shuts that idea down, saying this conversation is his reward. Realizing that approach won't work, the blonde quickly changes topics and begs to become Seong's streaming partner, even his editor. Seong casually replies, sure. The blonde immediately lights up, convinced he finally got accepted. A second later, Seong clarifies that by sure, he actually meant no, then walks away without another glance, leaving the blonde standing there alone, looking like he's about to cry.